Chapter 5078. If it's something refined by the swift cherry great sage, then it's understandable. Xiao Hua said indifferently, this thing is indeed powerful, but if it's activated by the Empress' strength as an oceanic powerhouse, it's beyond her ability, and it's inevitable that there will be some flaws. Swift cherry great sage. Dai Er's eyes flashed with surprise, and she was secretly surprised. What this old man said is nothing. Xiao Hua finally said, this old man can break it with a wave of my hand. The most troublesome thing is that Nyang's soul, body, and so on are connected to this cocoon. As long as there are any abnormal movements in the cocoon, she will sense it and immediately react from inside. In other words, the faster this old man breaks the array, the faster the Empress will die. This. Dai was also dumbfounded. She didn't expect the Empress to be so decisive, leaving no way out. But thinking about it carefully, being surrounded by Dongshan Yi, wasn't it a dead end? If it weren't for the existence of Xiao Hua, who would know that Xian Wan was trapped here, and who would come to save her? As Xiao Hua spoke, he raised his head and looked in a certain direction with a smile. Of course, the most important thing is that since this soul formation has been activated, Dong Shani will definitely sense it. With Dong Shani here, we naturally have hope of breaking the formation. Damn it! Dai smiled bitterly and cursed, blaming herself. This disciple was too worried, please forgive this disciple. You were worried before because you were worried about the Empress, but now, it's because you are afraid of this place. Xiao Hua smiled, Dai, you still haven't experienced enough. Seeing the place where you were heavily injured when you were young, your heart's foundation is shaken. From the perspective of my Dao sect, it's an unstable Dao heart. I'm not too sure about Xian Wan's aptitude, but your aptitude is excellent. This old man has high hopes for you. If you have time in the future, you should learn more about the demonic spear with Yuanya, and use the demonic qi to sharpen your mind. Yes, this disciple understands. Dai Er's heart trembled, and she hurriedly bowed. It's good that you understand. Xiao Hua nodded and rubbed his hands again. Lightning bolts as thin as hair shot out from the void and pierced into the soul formation like needles. Following the insertion of the lightning needles, the hundreds of dark green ribbons of light slowly stopped moving, like dead poisonous snakes stopped within the light. Then, Xiao Hua opened his mouth. Rumble. A few fist-sized green seal characters fell into the air, the void became extremely distorted. The green seal characters turned into strange tentacles and grabbed at the dark green ribbons of light. Zzzzz. The ribbons of light let out hissing sounds as they were slowly pulled out. However, the band of light had only been pulled up a few feet when the holy white light on the left began to sway violently. A faint sense of violence was suddenly born. Troublesome. Xiao Hua frowned. He made a grabbing motion with his right hand and a shackling force landed on the white light. The berserk force instantly calmed down. However, at the same time that the berserk force calmed down, strands of fine lines started to appear within the white light. Forget it. Xiao Hua hurriedly let go. Then, the green seal characters turned into tentacles and quickly dissipated. The dark green ribbons of light once again fell into the white light. The white light also swayed a few times before returning to normal. After pausing for a moment, Xiao Hua transmitted a few words. Unfortunately, this cocoon was refined by the fast cherry grand sage. Xiao Hua's transmission couldn't enter, so Xian Wan inside naturally couldn't detect it. Dai hesitated for a moment and turned to look at Yuanya. Yuanya gave her a smile and said, Don't worry, Dai Master is waiting for Dong Shani. He is very careful and likes to go with the flow. If Dong Shani can help solve it, that's the best. Master won't have to take the risk. If Dong Shani can't solve it, Master will use other divine arts. In short, Master will definitely be able to save the Empress. Xiao Hua looked at Yuanya curiously. Yuanya was right. Xiao Hua didn't use many of his divine arts. It didn't mean that he couldn't solve it. The worst thing was that Xiao Hua could send the complete soul formation into the space. Everything would be as easy as lifting a finger. While they were talking, Xiao Hua suddenly raised his head slightly, looked out, and said with a smile, "Huh? How could it be her?" She came quickly. Dai, and Yuanya hurriedly released their divine senses. Unfortunately, in the wind and snow, they didn't see any traces of cultivators. After the time it took to eat a meal, a probing divine sense descended from the sky at the location Xiao Hua had previously explored. When it saw Xiao Hua and the others clearly, it quietly withdrew. Then, a figure flitted across the red clouds and a slightly surprised voice fell along with the snowflakes, "Huh? Who are you? What are you doing here?" When the voice disappeared, a female cultivator wearing a rainbow-colored bird feather dress stepped on the red clouds and landed. This woman looked very beautiful. She had a goose egg-shaped face and a pair of eyes that could be happy or angry. The woman's gaze swept over Xiao Hua and the others, then looked at the light of the soul formation again. Seeing that it wasn't Dong Shan Yi, Dai, was a little surprised. She looked at Xiao Hua and cupped her hands towards the female cultivator. "This one is Yuan Dai. May I know who you are?" "Yuan Dai." The female cultivator looked at Dai, then at Yuanya and Xiao Hua. "Who are you? What are you doing here? Who are you?" Yuanya asked with some displeasure. Like Xiao Hua, he had already concealed his cultivation. How could this female cultivator see through it? "Huh, you don't even recognize me." The female cultivator laughed. "It seems that you are sword cultivators from Huan country. It seems that you are a very famous cultivator in the Cultivation 3 countries." Xiao Hua touched his nose and smiled. "May I ask what your name is?" "I am Fairy Yingzhua from Xuanyan School." The female cultivator said haughtily, "How dare you trespass into the territory of the state of Xi without the consent of the state of Xi?" "Oh, so it is Fairy Yingzhua." Xiao Hua nodded. "I am Xiao Hua. I have long heard of Fairy's name. Unfortunately, I have never had the chance to meet you. Now that I have met you, you are indeed worthy of your reputation." Xiao Hua. Hearing Xiao Hua call himself Fairy Yingzhua frowned and asked curiously, "You are a Dao cultivator disciple?" "That's right." Xiao Hua smiled. "I was Shang Huaming's disciple in the beginning. Later, Shang Huaming was killed by 3 nascent soul cultivators. I joined the Imperial Thunder sect. However, my luck was bad and I was expelled from the sect. You. Fairy Yingzhua was shocked. "You are really Xiao Hua? You are actually still alive?" "Of course." Xiao Hua smiled sweetly and replied. "If I am not alive, who can avenge Shang Huaming's blood feud for my pitiful master? Damn it!" Fairy Yingzhua cursed in a low voice. Her figure flashed and she suddenly pounced towards Xiao Hua. At the same time, the tyrant spring bud that she had hidden in her hands suddenly shot out. At the tip of the slender and beautiful rod, a large flower bud was about to bloom. As the flower bud bloomed, the heaven and earth spiritual chi in the surrounding sky surged over and gradually condensed into a silken form beside the flower bud. When the flower bud bloomed into a fresh flower, Fairy Yingzhua let out a thunderous shout. Her hand seemed to be pulling a heavy object as she slowly waved it. Countless thin threads streaked through the air near the flower bud, bringing along even more heaven and earth spiritual chi in the surroundings and pierced towards Xiao Hua. As these thin threads streaked through the air, they let out a piercing sound and tore apart the nearby void. The entire thin thread transformed into a large net, almost completely enveloping Xiao Hua's body. Seeing Fairy Yingzhua make her move, a cold smile appeared on Xiao Hua's face. He looked at the void shattering and the magic treasure condensing, yet he said in a lonely voice, "What a pity. Fairy Yingzhua was actually taken over by Dongshan Yi. Even if I want to take revenge, I can't. I don't know if I should thank you or kill you. Speaking to here, Xiaohua looked towards Yuanya and said, make your move. However, let her live, let's see how we can save the Empress. Shua. Just as Xiaohua was speaking, Fairy Yingzhua's tyrant spring bud had already hit Xiaohua. However, just as Fairy Yingzhua was dumbstruck, the heavy threads fell through the air, as if Xiaohua's figure was merely an illusion. However, the experienced and knowledgeable Dong Shan-yi understood that this was a spatial divine ability. Xiaohua looked like he was in the same space as her, but in reality, long before the tyrant spring bud fell, Xiaohua had already escaped into another space. Seeing this, how could Dong Shan-yi not know that Xiaohua's strength was too much stronger than hers? She didn't have time to be shocked, black gas surged around her body and she transformed to escape. Kill! Yuanya roared, holding the bone spear in his hand, he revealed his strength and stabbed towards Dong Shan-yi. Ah! Seeing the layers of demonic aura on the bone spear, waves of demonic dragon aura that could kill her 10,000 times, not only did it seal the demonic aura and magic power in her body, it even sealed the space of several hundred feet around her. Only then did Dong Shan-yi truly realize the danger she was in. But seeing her cry out in fear, she once again took advantage of the situation and waved the tyrant spring bud. Pu. Endless rumbling sounds came from the void, layer after layer of threads were extinguished by the demonic aura, the illusion of the flower was pierced by the demonic spear, and finally, with a loud bang, the tyrant spring bud was pierced by the Yuanying's demonic spear. Amidst the rumbling sounds, a fist-sized hole pierced through the handle of the tyrant spring bud, and several cracks also appeared near the hole. The demonic aura surged like a tidal wave in front of Dong Shan-yi, and the tip of the demonic spear that could pierce through a mountain with just a slight movement was pressed between Dong Shan-yi's eyebrows. Dong Shan-yi naturally wouldn't give up without a fight. She narrowed her eyes, the demonic aura surged around her body, and she was about to resist again, but at this moment, Shua. Hundreds of holy flames soared into the sky, like a tsunami, shrouding the space of nearly 100 miles. In the flames, Dyer spread her wings and revealed her true form, her elegant neck slightly bent, and her head that was more beautiful than Empress Xianwan's proudly raised. The unique nobility of the Swan clan was inadvertently revealed between her delicate eyebrows. And now, there was an indescribable murderous aura in that nobility. The whistling of the light was like the anger that had accumulated in Dyer's heart for hundreds of years, and the aura that was comparable to a moon elite was even more vast than the sky. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote, vote for a recommendation vote, bookmark, gift, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 5079. How? How is this possible? You. Which elite of the heavenly fortune palace are you? Dong Shan-yi was shocked. Facing Yuanya, she might not have been able to gauge Qin Yuanya's strength, but facing Dai, she clearly knew that her little bit of strength was not even comparable to a little wolf cub in front of Dai. She tactfully withdrew her resistance and cried out in shock, "Why haven't I seen you before? Of course you've seen the moon elites from 700 years ago." Dai's body was like a crescent moon as she stood in the air. Her holy flames illuminated everything within a radius of several hundred kilometers, and the snowflakes that fell into the center of the flames turned into nothingness. Dai's voice was a little lazy, but also a little arrogant. She said coldly, "But what about the moon elites from 700 years ago? How could you have seen them all?" But Dong Shan-yi said one word and then closed his mouth. His eyes, already glowing green, looked at the soul formation in the distance and began to ponder. Dong Shan-yi. Dai said faintly, "If you want to live, quickly release the Empress from the formation." He. When Dong Shan-yi heard this, her heart settled. The demonic qi around her body slowly retracted, revealing Fairy Yingzhua's body. She smiled and said, Junior can naturally release Xianwan from inside, but Junior would like to ask Senior to agree to Junior's two small requests. Speak. Dai asked without hesitation. It's very simple. Dongshan Yi replied quickly, Senior must first promise not to let Xianwan hurt Junior. Secondly, when Xianwan returns to the 10,000 demon realm, she will give Junior the Void Sea primordial water of Demon King Mo Sa. Damn it. Dai finally understood why Dongshan Yi chased her from the 10,000 demon realm to the Dawn Rain continent. She cursed in her heart, so it's for the Void Sea primordial water. However, Dai hesitated and said, the Void Sea primordial water belongs to Demon King Mo Sa. I can't guarantee that the Empress can get it from him, but I promise she won't hurt you. Of course the Empress can't hurt Junior now, but what about Senior and the others? Dongshan Yi realized that her request was wrong and quickly corrected it. Dai glanced at Xiaohua, nodded, and said, don't worry, we won't do anything. Alright. When Dongshan Yi heard this, he was relieved. He smiled and said, Senior, please wait a moment. After he finished speaking, Dongshan Yi's body once again emitted black gas. Strands of dark green light also surged out from the black gas like spirit snakes. When the black gas turned into a black robe, it covered Dongshan Yi's body. Roar! Dongshan Yi let out a wolf howl. His body rapidly expanded. He abandoned Fairy Yingzhua's human form and turned into a wolf. Senior, please stand back a bit. Dongshan Yi's voice was slightly hoarse. As he spoke, he flew to the front of the array. He looked at the soul array that Xiaohua pulled out of thin air. His dark green eyes looked at Xiaohua and Yuanya. Then, with a roar, the thousands of strands of green light around him turned into threads. It was like the light from a magic treasure from before that rushed towards the soul array. 1-1. The green light was naturally formed by small green seal scripts. When these green seal scripts touched the soul array, the green light above the soul array was immediately attracted. It slowly rotated and fell towards Dongshan Yi's position. Following the roar of the soul array, layers of strange halos began to emerge from the soul array's holy flames. They turned into rings and entered Dongshan Yi's body. Sigh. Xiaohua saw this and sighed, you really brought this upon yourself. After that, Xiaohua opened his mouth and a green seal script the size of a fist flew out. This green seal script flashed with a pure dark green color. It rushed between Dongshan Yi and the soul array like a meteor. Woo-woo. The green seal script turned into a strange screeching sound. A mysterious force was born from the void and instantly cut off the connection between Dongshan Yi and the soul array. Even the green seal script's counterattack was like a river flowing backwards into Dongshan Yi's body. Ah! Dongshan Yi screamed and flew back. His body was covered in a bloody light. Large pieces of flesh fell from the black gas. There were also faint traces of green light entwining on the flesh. You! Who are you? Why do you know the forbidden technique of my 10,000 demon realm? Dongshan Yi stood in the air. The black gas on his body was dim, but the green light was strong. On his ferocious wolf head, he couldn't help but reveal an extremely shocked expression. Xiaohua would not answer his question. He only said coldly, this old man gave you a chance to redeem yourself, but you don't know how to cherish it. You dare to use the spirit-changing technique in front of this old man. Do you think we are all idiots? Ha ha ha. Seeing that his plan was seen through, Dongshan Yi raised his head and laughed, what's wrong? I'm already like this. What can you do to me? You can just kill me. I don't want to live anymore. Since the forbidden technique is called a forbidden technique, it is naturally not something an ordinary human or demon can bear. Xiaohua had already seen through Dongshan Yi's suffering. He said lightly, the green seal script is the sound of heaven and earth, the sound of ghosts and gods. You, an ordinary demon, dare to pry into the ghosts and gods of heaven and earth. Isn't it obvious that you will be cursed? You must have trapped Xian Wan because you want to possess her Feng clan's demon body. Are you preparing to struggle at death's door for a few more days? However, this old man will also tell you that even if you possess her body, you won't be able to live for long. The backlash of the forbidden technique is the soul, not the body. You have already possessed Yingzhou Fairy, you must already know this flaw. You know that you can never escape this curse, right? That's right. Dong Shan-yi endured the double pain from his soul and body. He gritted his teeth and said, "It is because I discovered this flaw after possessing Yingzhou Fairy that I didn't force Xian Wan further. Otherwise, I would have already done it." Oh. If that's the case. Xiao Hua smiled, "You must have other uses for Xian Wan. Do you want to know?" Dong Shan-yi looked at Xiao Hua and realized something. He actually bargained. Xiao Hua waved his hand, "You don't need to act smart in front of this old man. If this old man wants to know, I just need to save Xian Wan from this soul array. Why ask you?" Ha! Dong Shan-yi laughed even louder, "Since you can do it, why don't you? You are afraid of harming Xian Wan's soul, right? Damn it!" Dai was furious and shouted, "How can you know the head elder's abilities? If it wasn't for the fact that he was afraid that my empress would misunderstand and think that you did it, he would have broken the array long ago." Empress? Dong Shan-yi suddenly woke up and looked at Dai in disbelief. You are actually called Empress Xian Wan. You are the little duck from back then. Ha ha ha. Dai laughed with grief and indignation. "Yes, it is me. I am the little duck that was almost killed by you back then." Dong Shan-yi was stunned and whispered, "How is that possible? This has only been 600 years, right? How can you become a moon elite? And you are not restricted by the laws of this realm. My upper race's opportunity, how can a wolf demon of a lower race know about it?" Dai sneered. Dong Shan-yi was angry and said, "So what if I am of a lower race? Are lower races destined to not surpass upper races? I am just a white swan trampled on by a toad, what is there to be proud of? If your heavenly fortune palace is so powerful, why would you give your saintess to Archfiend Mo Sa? Look at Archfiend Mo Sa, I would rather die than marry him." With that, Dong Shan-yi looked up to the sky and shouted, "Heavens, why are you so unfair? I spent so much effort to cultivate, gave up the easy way to enter the narrow door, gave up my wolf race's cultivation method, and cultivated a forbidden technique. I suffered so much in these years, why can't you look at me? I just want to borrow Archfiend Mo Sa's void sea primordial water to refine my demon body, I just want to borrow the Wind Clan's heavenly pure feather to enter the heavenly feather sacred world to find the source of the forbidden technique, why is it so difficult? Heavenly pure feather." Xiao Hua frowned and looked at Dai, thoughtfully. Dai faltered slightly before a joyful expression appeared on her face, and she also exclaimed in a low voice, "Tian Jiayu? Yes, use heavenly pure feather. How can I be so stupid?" Then, Dai shouted, "Head elder, disciple knows how to inform Empress. Heavenly pure feather. What is that?" As Xiao Hua spoke, a meaningful smile appeared on his face. Dai was a bit embarrassed and whispered, "Heavenly pure feather is the Wind Clan's sacred object that disciple mentioned to head elder. It was also the object that disciple hid in disciple's body when she risked her life to send me out." Ah! Dong Shan-yi was stunned and shouted, "How is that possible? Xian Wan, didn't she marry Archfiend Mo Sa long ago? She is no longer the Wind Clan's holy maiden, how can she still have heavenly pure feather? What do you know?" Dai said proudly, "My empress is as pure as jade, even if she married into a Mo Sa palace, she is still a holy maiden. Naturally, she can still keep heavenly pure feather. That damned Xian Wan." Dong Shan-yi gritted her teeth and cursed. Then she mocked, "Poor toad. AI. Xiao Hua heard and couldn't help but think of Archfiend Mo Sa. Although Archfiend Mo Sa's appearance was just passable and couldn't match Xian Wan, he was really good to Xian Wan, so he sighed and said, "It should be the respectable Archfiend Mo Sa." Dai heard and also said with deep veneration, "That's right, head elder is right." When Disciple was young, Disciple felt injustice towards Empress, but after thinking about it these years, Archfiend Mo Sa was really good to Empress. He built Qin School Palace for Empress and gave her the cocoon of the Rapid Cherry Sage, but without Empress's consent, he wouldn't even take a step into Qin School Palace. Moreover, because my Wind clan has been unable to choose the next holy maiden, Archfiend Mo Sa has never stayed in Qin School Palace. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote for a recommendation vote, collect, reward. Thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 50-80. What can't be obtained, always feels precious. Xiao Hua nodded and said, "And what can be obtained? Never know how to cherish. The human race is like this, the demon race is also the same. Junior understands." Dai deeply looked at Yuanya, who didn't seem to understand romance and only stared at Dong Shan Yi to prevent her from escaping. Junior will not follow in Empress' footsteps. With that, Dai's right wing flashed and a holy feather of light flew out. The moment this feather of light appeared, it emitted an extremely pure aura. Countless swan-like rays of light shot out from this feather of light and rushed into the void. "Headmaster, this is the pure sky feather, forgive Disciple for concealing it earlier." Dai said somewhat embarrassedly and seemed to want to deliver the pure sky feather to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua had already seen the pure sky feather in the space. He slightly smiled and waved his hand. "This object is pure and holy, it doesn't have to go through this old man's hands. You can use your own technique to let Empress know." "Thank you, Headmaster, for forgiving Disciple for concealing it." Lowering her proud head, the pure sky feather landed near the soul formation with a flap of her wings. Swoosh! Without waiting for the pure sky feather to get close, those centipede-like green lights flowing inside the soul formation immediately reacted and flew out of the light shadow and pounced towards the pure sky feather with bared fangs and brandished claws. The pure sky feather slightly trembled like a weak woman, the light flames retracted and actually seemed to be retreating. Sigh. Xiao Hua didn't expect the pure sky feather to be so afraid of filthy things. He immediately thought of the timid and cautious Featherwind King he saw in the 10,000 demon realm. Thus, he sighed and raised his hand. Kachacha. 3 corpses in thunder exploded and instantly extinguished the green lights coming out of the soul formation. Once the filth in the space was gone, the pure sky feather spun again like it was dancing and fell towards the soul formation. In front of the pure sky feather, Xiao Hua's 3 corpses in thunder didn't disperse but turned into a thunder golden armor and killed all the green lights coming out. Which thunder? Dong Shan Yi saw the power of the 3 corpses in lightning and cried out in her heart. Her face was ashen. She clearly knew that her little taboo power was not even worthy of carrying the shoes of this human cultivator named Xiao Hua. The pure heavenly feather landed gracefully on the soul formation like light dust brushing against one's face and a light mist dispersing. The pure heavenly feather landed gracefully on the soul formation. The moment the swan-like light touched the light of the pure heavenly feather, the entire pure heavenly feather froze. After the time it took to eat a meal, there was no change to the pure heavenly feather. Instead, the light of the pure heavenly feather continued to pour into the pure heavenly feather. Then, with a boom, the light of the pure heavenly feather exploded. Pure and holy light threads were drawn out like moonlight. At the same time, a whirlpool had appeared in the originally dark sky. The whirlpool tore apart the dark clouds and the full moon peeked out. Right at this moment, Xiao Hua faintly smiled. The countless soul threads between his brows turned into countless tentacles that fell down and grabbed all of the green light in the soul formation at the same time. Then, she heard the sound of the earth shaking, rumble. All of the green light was extracted. Dongshan-yi was once again dumbstruck. The great spirit switching formation that she had carefully arranged was easily broken by Xiaohua just like that. Swoosh! Under the moonlight, a pure white swan whose body was covered in dark green light spots and black spots appeared, as if it had just hatched from a light egg. That ostentatious and flamboyant pure white wings were so elegant, and that lazy neck of the swan seemed to see everything in the world as dust. An aura that made people feel pity for the swan turned into a cool breeze, and along with the moonlight, it turned the surrounding few miles into a young girl's dreamland. Nyang nyang! Dyer sobbed. She spread her wings and was about to rush into the light. Dyer? Nyang nyang's lazy and unhurried voice sounded. There is a vicious curse here. Don't be anxious. Come closer, Nyang nyang, don't be anxious. Xiaohua's gentle voice sounded. This one is Xiaohua. This one will immediately help you remove the witchcraft curse. Oh, okay. Nyang nyang's golden eyes moved slightly. It was unknown if she saw Xiaohua clearly. However, hearing his familiar voice, Nyang nyang smiled and replied. Kachacha. Lightning struck, swoosh swoosh swoosh. Clear rain surged, the cleansing heaven purifying earth technique that hadn't been used in a long time was used. The lightning and rain controlled the space around Nyang nyang. Seeing the lightning extinguish the dark green dots around Nyang nyang's body and the rain wash away the black decay, a perfect and pure Xian Wan was reborn in the light. Dongshan Yi's jealousy reached its peak. Finally, a rainbow several zhang in size appeared from the cleansing heaven purifying earth technique and fell into Xian Wan's body. The 9 colors of light were like a feather coat that appeared on Xian Wan's body. Then, it slowly faded. Ha! Xian Wan's surprised voice sounded. Xiaohua, your forbidden technique is actually this powerful. As Xian Wan's voice fell, rumble. The spiritual exchange array collapsed bit by bit, and the surrounding space also collapsed inch by inch. However, what made Xian Wan very puzzled was that these spatial forces that could tear apart her light feathers didn't even touch a single feather on her body. Xian Wan looked at the collapsed formation with interest and a pensive look appeared in his golden eyes. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the space returned to normal. Xian Wan retracted his wings and returned to his human form. Nyang nyang. Dyer also turned back into her human form. With tears on her face, she threw herself in front of Xian Wan like a child who saw her mother. Xian Wan smiled and opened her arms to embrace Dyer. She stroked Dyer's hair and said lovingly, Dyer, I haven't seen you for so long. You've grown up. Woo woo. Dyer cried. Yes, Nyang nyang, I've grown up. I missed you so much. Silly child. Xian Wan smiled gracefully. Haven't we met again? Xiaohua didn't step forward. He only looked up at the Nyang nyang before. He only felt a sense of familiarity and respect. Now that he looked at her again, it was a shocking feeling. No wonder the heavenly blessing palace made her the saintess. No wonder Demon King Masa doted on her so much. No wonder the heartless great sage Ming Hua had feelings for her. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the bright moon in the sky witnessed Xian Wan's escape. She pulled back the red clouds to cover her tracks and the dancing snowflakes fell again. Dyer got up from the Nyang nyang's embrace and wiped the tears on her face. She whispered, Nyang nyang, you were trapped by Dongshan Yi. It was all thanks to Daoist Xiao. Otherwise, this servant wouldn't know how to save you. Xian Wan nodded. She tidied up her transformed palace dress and bowed to Xiaohua. Xian Wan thanks Daoist Xiao. Xiaohua naturally wouldn't let Xian Wan bow. He raised his hand and smiled. Nyang nyang's grace to this Xiao is like a mountain. This Xiao should repay Nyang Nyang. Nyang Nyang doesn't need to be so polite. Xian Wan knew that Xiao Hua's magic power was profound, but she still underestimated him. Under the bow, she truly felt Xiao Hua's magic power as thick as the earth. She couldn't help but be shocked. She asked curiously, "Daoist Xiao, why are you all so strong? Even dire. I'm afraid she's a star realm expert, right? Could it be that I've been suppressed for hundreds of thousands of years? Why do I feel like it's only been 1,000 years? Hee, Nyang Nyang, this servant has now stepped on the edge of the moon realm." Dyer smiled, as if she was showing off something fun to her loved ones. "Nyang Nyang, everyone has their own opportunities. There's no need to talk about this." Xiao Hua said, "You remember correctly. It should be 600 or 700 years. Oh. Xian Wan nodded. She didn't ask any more questions and smiled. "Then, what about Xiao Huang?" "Xiao Huang is cultivating in the Kunlun paradise. It's not convenient for him to come out and see Nyang Nyang." Xiao Hua didn't hide anything and replied, "However, although his strength is not comparable to Dyer's now, Dyer will not be able to reach him in the future." Xian Wan wasn't surprised. She nodded and said, "If I'm not wrong, he should be the holy beast Deity, right?" It should be." Xiao Hua nodded. "But he still has a long way to go. He has only taken a few steps now." Deity. Dong Shanyi's brain was really not enough. She really didn't know who to provoke, but she had to provoke Xian Wan. "Who is this?" Xian Wan naturally saw Yuanya long ago. Yuanya's fierce demonic energy made Xian Wan uncomfortable, so she frowned. Dyer saw Xian Wan frown and knew something was wrong. She hurriedly lowered her head and said, "Nyang Nyang, his name is Yuanya. He is this servant's, damn it." Xiao Hua also knew something was wrong. He cursed in a low voice, "This Xiao should let Yuanya save Xian Wan." Xian Wan nodded slightly and said, "I understand." He. Xiao Hua smiled awkwardly and said to Yuanya, "Yeah, come and greet Nyang Nyang. You must have heard about it from Dyer." "Yes, master." Yuanya obeyed Xiao Hua's words and flew over and bowed to Xian Wan. Seeing this, Xiao Hua said to Xian Wan, "Nyang Nyang, this is this Xiao's disciple. His name is Yuanya. Although he has a demonic spear and cultivates demonic arts, he is a true man. His heart is magnanimous and his actions are just and honorable." Xian Wan smiled and waved her hand. "Yuanya's strength is probably much higher than this queen's. This queen does not dare to accept such a bow. There is no need." Saying this, Xian Wan habitually urged her magic power to stop Yuanya. Unfortunately, Yuanya only had Xiao Hua in his eyes and ignored Xian Wan's attempt to stop him. He still bowed and ignored Xian Wan's magic power. Xian Wan frowned and wanted to urge the power of the stars and moon, but Yuanya had already lowered his head. She had no choice but to turn her body slightly to show that she was ignoring him. Yuanya got up. Seeing Xian Wan like this, he also frowned and a trace of anger appeared in his heart. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. While muttering in his heart that no one was perfect, he waved his hand and motioned for Yuanya to withdraw first. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a month, vote for a recommendation, collect, reward, and Chapter 5081. Dai, Xian Wan watched Yuanya leave and said to Dai, "I've already told you what the Wind Clan's holy maiden needs to do. All the rules are engraved in the Heavenly Fortune Palace. You've been studying the pure heavenly feather for many years, so you should know better, right? Self-cleanliness is the most important rule." "Yes, Empress." Dai, was a little confused, but she suddenly felt uneasy. "This servant knows what you're talking about, but what does it have to do with this servant?" Empress is my heavenly fortune palace's holy maiden. I've already married into the Masa palace. The reason I still keep the pure heavenly feather is because the heavenly fortune palace hasn't found a suitable holy maiden. Xian Wan said calmly, now, I've been infected by the witchcraft curse and am no longer pure. Moreover, I originally wanted you to bring the pure heavenly feather to the 10,000 demon world, but it has accompanied you for nearly 1,000 years. You've already been recognized by the pure heavenly feather, so there's no need for the heavenly fortune palace to find another holy maiden. Your strength is enough to be my heavenly fortune palace's holy maiden. Empress. Dai, hurriedly knelt, Dai, how can I be a holy maiden? Are you a member of my wind clan? Xian Wan asked. Yes. Dai, answered without any hesitation. Since that's the case, you should know how important the holy maiden is to my wind clan. You should be brave enough to bear the responsibility. Xian Wan pointed at the pure heavenly feather. Sure enough, the pure heavenly feather ignored Xian Wan's aura and floated to Dai's head. Xian Wan smiled and said, Dai, look, the pure heavenly feather has recognized you as its holy maiden, it's not nonsense. Dai knelt in the air with mixed feelings. She really didn't expect that the holy maiden she had painstakingly rescued would have such an unforeseen event. Dai couldn't help turning to look at Yuanya. Xiaohua opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but Dai wasn't a Fortune Gate disciple, and she was indeed a Wind Clan's demon spirit. He didn't have the right to interfere with the holy maiden's appearance, right? Not to mention that the pure heavenly feather had already recognized Dai. Daya retracted her gaze and whispered. You are already my Wind Clan saintess, there is no need to call yourself a servant. Xian Wan stopped Dai from arguing and smiled, from now on, you can also be called Xia Dai. I wouldn't dare. Dai bit her lips and said in a low voice, Dai already has a name. Oh. Xia Wei frowned. What's your name? Yuan Dai. Dai seemed to have steeled her heart. Her voice was still rather loud, which made Xia Wei unhappy. Yuan Dai. Xian Wan's eyes glowed with a golden light, but it quickly disappeared. He then said, the name of the Wind Clan saintess cannot be blasphemed. Only the Palace Lord of the Heavenly Fortune Palace can confirm this. Let's talk about this later. Yes, Empress. Dai lowered her head, and Ren Tian Jiayu landed on her head. Empress. Xiaohua at the side couldn't help but say, the so-called purity, still focuses on the state of mind, not the appearance and body. Xiaohua's words were not without sarcasm, but unfortunately, Xian Wan ignored him. She watched the pure heavenly feather merge into Dai's body, then smiled and turned to Xiaohua, Spiritual Master Xiao, this Empress thanks you again. However, this Empress still has to rush back to the 10,000 demon realm and safely send the new saintess back to the Heavenly Fortune Palace. This great kindness can be thanked later. No need. Xiaohua helplessly waved his hand and said, our karma has already been settled, there is no need to say thanks. Good, in that case, this Empress will take her leave. Xian Wan pulled Dai and let her get up and fly away. How should we deal with the Wolf Clan? Xiaohua pointed at Dongshan Yi and asked. Xian Wan glanced at Dongshan Yi as if she had seen a speck of dust and said lightly, since it was captured by Spiritual Master Xiao, it will naturally be handled by Spiritual Master Xiao. How Spiritual Master Xiao deals with it is Spiritual Master Xiao's business, it has nothing to do with this Empress. After saying that, Xian Wan pulled Dai and urged her body to fly away. Damn it! Seeing Xian Wan and Dai leave, Xiaohua couldn't help but curse in a low voice, Laozi guessed the process, but Laozi never would have guessed this ending. Hee, did you see? Dongshan Yi sneered, this is Xian Wan, this is the Wind Clan's holy maiden. She looks holy, but in reality, she is a *****. She was forced by Heavenly Blessing Palace to marry Demon King Mo Sa. Do you know what Demon King Mo Sa's true form is? A toad, huh? Don't you humans have a saying called a toad wants to eat swan meat? That toad wants to eat swan meat. Oh, that's not right, so far the toad hasn't eaten swan meat. This is nothing, in her heart, she is still thinking. Pa. Not waiting for Dong Shan Yi to finish, Xiao Hua slapped Dong Shan Yi's face and interrupted him, coldly saying, "You are wrong. In your opinion, Xian Wan is doing shady business, but in this Xiao's opinion, she is worthy of respect. This Xiao clearly feels that she has mishandled Dai, but this Xiao knows that this is what she should do as a holy maiden. Don't you think that she has the strength to pursue her own happiness, but for the Heavenly Blessing Palace, she endured the humiliation of marrying a toad? Don't you think that she could have flown away with her lover, but she still kept her chastity, living alone in Mo Sa Palace? Don't look at anything from your own point of view. He, you're right, but what about your disciple? Dong Shan looked at Yuanya with schadenfreude. He's probably going to be alone for the rest of his life, isn't he? He. Xiao Hua sneered, even an Origin World's Demon King Mo Sa can make Heavenly Blessing Palace's Featherwind King marry a holy maiden, can't my Fortune Gate's personal disciple kill his way to the Heavenly Blessing Palace? Xiao Hua then turned to Yuanya, "Yeah, disciple is here." Yuanya bowed. Master's karma with Holy Maiden has been settled. Xiao Hua instructed, "My Fortune Gate has nothing to do with the Heavenly Blessing Palace. As you can see, Dai has already acknowledged Yuan Dai, and she has you in her heart. You shouldn't let her down, you can do whatever you want, even if you kill your way to the Heavenly Blessing Palace with the Devil Spear, Master will support you. Also, don't worry, no matter what you do, my Fortune Gate will support you." What Heavenly Blessing Palace? What Wind Clan? Even if it's the Origin World, you don't have to be afraid. Go to the 10,000 Demon World and turn it upside down. Yes, Master. Yuanya smiled, although Dai didn't send me a message, disciple already understood the look in her eyes. After she sends Xianwan back to the 10,000 Demon World and returns the pure Sky Feather to the Wind Clan, Junior will kill his way to the Sky Rain World with the Bone Spear. Marry Dai, Very good. The 10,000 Demon World's demon race killed my Profound Alliance's cultivators, it's time for them to taste the power of the human race. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and said indifferently, "Go give the Swift Cherry Grand Sage a surprise." Xiao Hua then looked at Dong Shan Yi and said, "Since Xianwan didn't kill you, this old man naturally won't kill you. However, this old man won't let you go. After all, you took over Fairy Yingzhua's body, so you should bear the karma of Fairy Yingzhua. Let this old man ask you, which nascent soul realm cultivators killed Shang Huaming?" When Zhang Qingxiao came back to life, she once said that she killed Shang Huaming's nascent soul, but his cultivation was shallow at that time, so he couldn't see who it was. Zhang Qingxiao's words were all guesses, and Zhang Qingxiao naturally sent a disciple to investigate Long Dan. Xiao Hua also saw Long Dan, but he couldn't confirm who it was. Of course, there were many nascent soul realm cultivators in the three countries, but those who knew about the existence of Little White Dragon were definitely the nascent soul realm cultivators in the country of Shi. Fairy Yingzhua was the sect master of Xuanyan school, so she must be the main suspect in Zhang Qingxiao's suspicion. Therefore, when Xiao Hua saw Fairy Yingzhua appear, he immediately probed. At this time, Fairy Yingzhua was originally Dong Shan Yi's body, so most of Fairy Yingzhua's memories were clear, so Xiao Hua immediately found out the truth. Dong Shan Yi didn't hide anything. She thought for a moment and said, "Since you already know some, then I might as well tell you everything. Anyway, I don't want to live anymore. The others can forget about being happy." Dong Shan Yi told him everything she knew, including everything that happened at Shang Huaming's place that night. Hearing that 3 nascent soul realm cultivators killed Little White Dragon, who had crossed the Thunder Tribulation, and casually killed Xiao Yuehong, who was only in the Foundation Establishment realm, Gong Mingwei, and Zhang Qingxiao, who were in the Qi Refining realm, he couldn't help but clench his teeth. These nascent soul realm cultivators really didn't treat low-level cultivators as human beings. After saying that, Dong Shanyi looked at Xiao Hua and said, "That's how it is. I have nothing to hide. Quickly do it. Now I've been suffering from the backlash of this forbidden technique day and night. Elder Wu's body and soul can't bear it." Xiao Hua listened and pinched his chin, thinking secretly. Dong Shanyi said it clearly. After killing Shang Huoming and the other two cultivators and destroying Little White Dragon's body, they didn't catch up with Little White Dragon's soul. The three of them divided Little White Dragon's body in inner core, and then returned to their respective sections. Fairy Yingzhua had been stuck in the late nascent soul realm for a long time and couldn't break through the bottleneck to enter the spirit-severing realm. Sun Yunzi's Python Dragon Core couldn't be refined for a long time, so Fairy Yingzhua could only ask Dong Shanyi for help. Just as Xiao Hua thought, although the human cultivators of the Xian Alliance were killed by the demon race of the 10,000 demon realm, their cultivation methods were leaked out. Especially some low-level demon spirits, they didn't have their own cultivation methods, so they naturally used the cultivation methods of the human race to cultivate. Moreover, they modified it according to the differences of each demon race. Coincidentally, in order to break through in the early years, Dong Shanyi had studied the 9-transformation golden core cultivation method of the Xian Alliance. Now that he saw Fairy Yingzhua asking for advice, he took the opportunity to pass the cultivation method to Fairy Yingzhua. Of course, this cultivation method was mixed with some hidden tricks that Fairy Yingzhua couldn't detect. Fairy Yingzhua was naturally ecstatic when she received the cultivation method. At first, she had some doubts, but after a little bit of cultivation, she gained a lot, so she threw away her vigilance and began to cultivate at ease. But Fairy Yingzhua didn't know that she was stepping into the trap that Dong Shanyi had set for her step-by-step. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a month, vote for a recommendation, collect, reward. Thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 5082. Later, Sun Yunzi successfully refined the Python Dragon Pill. Relying on the Python Dragon Pill and the 9 Transformations Golden Pill technique, Fairy Yingzhua stepped into the Severed Spirit stage and became one of the few Grandmasters in Xi. But just when Fairy Yingzhua was happy, Dong Shanyi took advantage of the fact that her profound Qi had not recovered and used a secret technique to possess her body. Dong Shanyi had thought that by abandoning her werewolf form and using the body of a human divinity separating stage cultivator, the backlash from the Green Seal script would be eliminated. However, after 100 years, she discovered that the backlash from before had reappeared. Only now did she understand that the backlash from the Green Seal text was not only the body, but also the soul. Since this was the case, for Dong Shanyi who was born in the demon race, Goddess Xian Wan's body was 100 times stronger than that of an ordinary human cultivator. Therefore, Dong Shanyi abandoned her earlier plan and prepared to use Xian Wan's body for herself. But fortunately, Fairy Yingzhua was a severed spirit stage cultivator. This human body was brand new and could last for 1,000 years. Therefore, Dong Shanyi did not attack Xian Wan in these 600 years. Fairy Yingzhua, who killed Shang Huoming, was possessed by Dong Shanyi and died silently. The other murderer, Reverend Lu Ni of the Seven Skills sect, also received his retribution. The Seven Skills sect was originally a refining sect and the sect's founder left behind countless magic treasures. Among the 3 late nascent soul stage cultivators, Reverend Lu Ni was the most well-prepared. During the tribulation, his magic treasures were packed to the teeth. But even so, Reverend Lu Ni could not withstand the lightning strike and was killed by the lightning. Even his primordial spirit did not escape and his soul was scattered. Up until now, only Sun Yunzi of the Splendid sect had safely passed through the lightning tribulation. According to the customs of the 3 cultivation nations of the Dawn Rain continent, he had passed the position of sect master of the splendid sect to someone else and became a carefree Grand Supreme Elder. Humph. Xiao Hua's eyes flashed with a rare ruthlessness. He said indifferently, good will be rewarded with good and evil will be punished with evil. It's not that the time has not come yet. When the time comes, those who have hatred will take revenge. And now, it's time for Sun Yunzi to die. Xiao Hua looked at Dong Shan-yi, his tone was still calm. Previously, this old man already said, this old man will not forgive you. However, I won't kill you as you think. Killing you is too easy, and you definitely won't learn your lesson. This old man will imprison you and make you suffer the backlash of the forbidden power day and night. As he spoke, Xiao Hua raised his hand and pointed. A green light entered Dong Shanyi's body. Dong Shanyi still turned into Fairy Yingzhua's appearance and sat on the ground calmly. Spiritual Master, Spiritual Master. Seeing that he couldn't use his Dharma power, forbidden power, or even demonic power, Dong Shanyi panicked and shouted, please have mercy and kill me. I really don't want to live in this world. Xiao Hua ignored her. The Kunlun mirror in his hand shook, and Huang Tong flew out from within. Xiao Hua smiled and said, I'll have to trouble you, fellow Taoist, to imprison this wolf race with that little snow wolf. Sure. Huang Tong didn't decline. With a wave of her sharp claws, she grabbed Dong Shan-yi and spread her wings, tearing the void apart and leaving. Seeing that there was no one left, Xiao Hua asked Yuanya, are you going back to Shenhua continent to cultivate, or are you going to walk around Xiaoyu continent with me? Yuanya smiled and said, Dai, is gone. My Tao heart is a little unstable, and without her holy power, I'll be in danger refining the bone spear. It's better for me to stay by Master's side. Without waiting for Xiao Hua to speak, Yuanya looked around and said, besides, Lu Yi and the others aren't by Master's side. Master is a supreme being of the human race, and there's no reason for him to do anything. I'll stay by Master's side and serve him. Xiao Hua said curiously, why are you talking so much? Dai once said that silence is golden, but when it's time to speak, you still have to speak. Otherwise, others won't know what you're thinking. Yuanya replied, so, what I just said is what I think. Good. Auspicious clouds appeared under Xiao Hua's feet, and he slowly flew up and praised, there's a saying in the human race's Confucian cultivators that a woman is an academy, and a good woman can make a man more outstanding. You're blessed. Yes, Master. Yuanya put away his bone spear and respectfully flew behind Xiao Hua, this disciple will definitely go to the heavenly fortune palace to marry Dai. Xiao Hua smiled and flew aimlessly for a while, then suddenly stopped and turned to look in the direction of Sky Patrol City. Master. Yuanya naturally knew that direction was Sky Patrol City, and hurriedly asked, are you going to Sky Patrol City? Forget it. Xiao Hua shook his head and said, Sky Patrol City is now the territory of sword cultivators, and Master has no karma with sword cultivators. Why would I go there? Then where are we going? Yuanya asked. Xiao Hua looked in a direction and answered firmly, the place of origin, the place where the fortune gate takes root. Okay. Yuanya replied and left with Xiao Hua. Just as Xiao Hua turned around, Sky Patrol City, which was like a monster in the sky, suddenly shone brightly, and a city gate that was closed in the wind and snow opened with a roar. Inside the city gate, tens of thousands of flying swords rushed out in a mighty manner, forming a bridge that was several miles long in the night sky, reaching far into the darkness. At the end of the bridge, a handsome young man with a graceful temperament and a serene expression slowly stepped out of the city gate, dressed in a white robe. A faint halo appeared on the robe, reflecting the young man's jade-like face, and under the robe, the light purple sword robe made the young man look even sharper. Behind the young man was a late-stage gold core cultivator. This cultivator was dressed in a Taoist robe, and he also looked young. There was a smile on his face, and there was clearly a kind of respect on his face. As these two people walked out of the city gate, two female foundation establishment cultivators led more than 10 handsome men and beautiful women who were in the chi refinement realm. They held magic tools that looked like lanterns in their hands and quietly rushed out, then they stood neatly on both sides of the city gate. The brilliance on the magic tools flashed with 9 colors, driving away the nearby darkness. The young man glanced at the knight, then looked at the trembling flying sword under his feet, and frowned slightly. Xiao Mao, although this is Sky Patrol City and not Enlightenment Mountain Manor. But such a welcome. Isn't it too stingy? Don't let others look down on you. When Xiao Mao heard this, he humbly replied, Young master, some people like vanity, some people like peace, some people like power, and some people like pampering. Young master, you have to cater to their preferences. Tonight, young master, you have to be as grand as when you welcomed Vice Alliance leader Luo. Maybe that person will avoid you at first sight, and all of young master's plans will be in vain. The young man who was called young master nodded slightly and smiled, then I'll listen to you today. As long as that person enters Sky Patrol City, no matter what the outcome is, I'll get someone to help you conceive a baby. Xiao Mao was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed, Thank you for your kindness, young master. While they were talking, there was the sound of a sword, and a small sword swept over their heads and flew into Sky Patrol City. Then, a voice sounded from the city, Young Master Yi, the person you've been waiting for is here. Thank you, General, for asking the patrolling swordsman to let them in. Young Master Yi shouted with a smile. Yes, sir. Someone in the city responded, and another small sword that sent a message rushed into the night sky like a meteor. Young Master. Xiao Mao raised his hand and said, I'll accompany young master to welcome them. Okay. The young man nodded. Sword light appeared under his feet as he stepped on the bridge and flew into the night sky. When Xiao Mao followed, the other low-level disciples did not dare to delay. Like Xiao Mao, they did not step on the bridge. Instead, they urged their bodies to fly behind. After half a cup of tea's time, they saw a red light in the distant night sky. When they flew closer, they could see clearly that it was a flying boat that looked like a bird. There were several Taoist cultivators standing on the flying boat, and the one in front was a female nascent soul cultivator. She was as beautiful as a fairy, and her thin lips carried a faint smile. Not to mention her snow-white skin and peach-red Taoist robe, which gave birth to an unparalleled beauty in the dark night. Just the green bean-sized beauty mole at the corner of her mouth and her jade-like cheeks were enough to give birth to an indescribable wildness. Wasn't this female cultivator Fairy Hongxia? The cultivators behind Fairy Hongxia were not worth mentioning. Most of them were in the Foundation Establishment realm, and only one of them was in the early-stage Golden Core realm. The young man's gaze fell on Fairy Hongxia's beautiful face, and 2 balls of flames suddenly appeared in his originally calm eyes. It was just that the flames were fleeting and not obvious. As the flying boat flew closer, they heard the bridge. Fairy Hongxia did not fly out from the flying boat, but looked at Xiao Mao and frowned, Junior brother Xiao, I'm here. I'm Yi Shixiang. Greetings to Fairy Hongxia. The young man smiled and hurriedly bowed, I've long heard of Fairy Hongxia's great name and have always wanted to meet you. Unfortunately, there was a barrier between sword cultivators and Dao cultivators, so I never had the chance. Now that I've finally met Fairy Hongxia, I'm sure you live up to your reputation. In the 3 kingdoms of cultivation, I'm afraid there's no other woman as outstanding as Fairy Hongxia. I don't dare. Fairy Hongxia saw that although the young man looked young, his cultivation had already reached 2nd grade sword transformation realm. She did not dare to slight him and hurriedly bowed in return, I'm nothing but an undeserved reputation. After cultivating bitterly for close to 1,000 years, I'm still an early-stage nascent soul realm cultivator. How can I compare to you? You look young, but you're already a 2nd grade sword transformation realm cultivator. I'm the one whose undeserved reputation. Yi Shixiang hurriedly said humbly, my aptitude cannot be compared to Fairy Hongxia's. If I wasn't the young master of the Yi clan and was born with the convenience of cultivation, I'm afraid I wouldn't even be a sword transformation realm cultivator. It's indeed young Master Yi. When Fairy Hongxia heard this, her face revealed a smile that resembled an epiphyllum. She said, I've received junior brother Zhao's message saying that the Yi clan has the intention to form an alliance with my Kai clan. I'm a little surprised. My Kai clan is not well known in the country of Shi. I wonder why the Yi clan would want to form an alliance with my Kai clan. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, donate it, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 5083. Fairy is indeed a competent patriarch. You haven't even said a few words and you've already brought up the family's matters. I really admire you. Yi Shixiang laughed and said, compared to Fairy, this one is much more lazy. If it wasn't for Xiao Mao saying that the world situation has changed greatly and that us aristocratic families need to adapt to the trend and form many alliances, this one wouldn't even remember to do something for the clan. Therefore, I'm very concerned about the alliance between the Yi family and Kai family. In order to not cause Fairy to misunderstand, I've specially chosen Sentry City as the location for the discussion. I wonder if Fairy is satisfied. Fairy Hongxia looked at Sentry City on the other side of the bridge and replied neither haughtily nor humbly, as long as there's sincerity, anywhere is fine. Good, good. Yi Shixiang clapped his hands and said, with Fairy's words, I'm relieved. I can finally do something for my Yi family. Thank you Fairy for your help. Fairy, please. Fairy Hongxia flew down from the flying boat and nodded at Xiao Mao. Xiao Mao originally wanted to go up and greet her, but when he saw Fairy Hongxia land on the bridge, he hurriedly stopped and bowed in mid-air. Little brother greets senior sister, mm. Fairy Hongxia raised her hand to signal Xiao Mao to get up and asked, how have you been recently? I'm all right. Xiao Mao smiled bitterly, other than not having a baby, everything is fine. Fairy Hongxia smiled, not all of one's pursuits are cultivation. If you only think about having a baby, you might not be able to have one. Moreover, your foundation is excellent. If you don't walk the path of having a baby, you can consider other methods. Sigh, senior sister. Xiao Mao replied with a sullen face, little brother is a cultivator. What else can I do if I don't cultivate? If I don't walk the path of having a baby, do I have to walk the path of transforming into a sword? Forget it. Fairy Hongxia didn't have much experience and couldn't answer him. She shook her head and said, I'm just an early-stage nascent soul cultivator. I can't give you more pointers. At this point, Fairy Hongxia smiled at Yi Shixiang and said, young Master Yi, if the alliance between the Kai family and the Yi family succeeds, Xiao Mao will be a great contributor. The Yi family can't treat Xiao Mao unfairly. Yes, yes. Fairy, don't worry. Yi Shixiang hastily nodded, Fairy might not know the details of my Yi clan right now, but Fairy will understand in the future. My Yi clan's foundation isn't something that ordinary aristocratic families can compare to, so my Yi clan will absolutely not treat anyone who helps my Yi clan unfairly. Alright, young master, please. Fairy Hongxia raised her hand to indicate for Yi Shixiang to go first. Yi Shixiang smiled and stopped being courteous. He activated his sword light and stepped onto the bridge to fly towards Sentry City. Fairy Hongxia frowned as she looked at the bridge beneath her feet. She then looked at Xiao Mao and the rest who were standing respectfully at the side, not daring to approach. She turned her head and instructed, all of you, keep the flying boat and follow Xiao Mao over. Yes, Patriarch. A few cultivators responded and alighted from the flying boat. They all came over to greet Xiao Mao. Judging from the expressions on their faces, they seemed to be very familiar with him. As Fairy Hongxia flew past, the bridge flew like a colorful sparrow and slowly retracted. When Yi Shixiang accompanied Fairy Hong Xia into Sky Patrol City, the bridge also fell into Sky Patrol City. The city gates were closed, the light was extinguished, and the night was deep. The wind was violent, the snow was heavy, and the storm in the sky was brewing to strike. Xiaohua naturally did not know that he had already missed the opportunity to meet Fairy Hong Xia. He brought Yuanya and flew away. The snowflakes gradually lessened, and the first rays of the morning sun had also arrived. Xiaohua loved the moment when the sun first rose. At that moment, everything between heaven and earth seemed to be brand new. Moreover, as he flew, the rays of light were born everywhere. Every ray of light was filled with joy and warmth of welcome. Xiaohua was looking at the foothills in the distance, wanting to say something to Yuanya. Suddenly, he raised his eyebrows and looked into the distance with some surprise. He said curiously, "It's really strange. Why are they together again?" "Master." Yuanya smiled, "Could it be that you've met an acquaintance again?" "That's right." Xiaohua looked in that direction with a smile. "This Dawn Rain continent is where I used to cultivate. I even participated in an extremely famous sword Dao battle here, so I know a lot of cultivators. Look, I've met a few more while flying. It's just that I'm a little hesitant. Should I go down and meet them or stay here and watch the situation develop?" "Disciple will follow wherever master goes." Yuanya didn't have any good suggestions and only answered casually. "Let's go down." Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, "However, I want to hide my cultivation and test some people's reactions. I can also settle some karma while I'm at it." "All right." Yuanya said and used the Fortune Gate's secret technique to suppress his cultivation to the nascent soul realm. Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, "Nascent soul realm cultivators are masters on the Dawn Rain continent. With your cultivation, who else can I test?" Unfortunately, Yuanya also smiled bitterly and said, "Master, this is the lowest level disciple can suppress. Why don't you seal disciples' cultivation first? It seems like that's the only way." Xiaohua smiled slightly. His hands moved and several seals entered Yuanya's body, suppressing Yuanya's cultivation from the verge of 8th grade to early gold core realm. "Ha!" Xiaohua looked around and said with a smile, "There's no other way. Only gold core realm cultivators can be master's disciple." While he was speaking, Xiaohua's cultivation also fell rapidly. It fell to early nascent soul realm before it stopped. "Master." Yuanya curled his lips and said, "Your acquaintance is actually a nascent soul realm cultivator. This kind of cultivator, do you still want to test him?" "Yes." Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and said, "Because this involves a person's life and death. Master can't not treat this seriously. Let's go. I hope this person can change a little in these few hundred years." Yuanya followed Xiaohua and flew towards the east. After a meal, he saw a flying boat flying out of the morning sun. There were 3 cultivators standing on the flying boat. Xiaohua stopped in midair and saw the flying boat getting closer and closer. Although he had already seen the people coming with his divine sense, when he saw them with his eyes, the corners of his eyes couldn't help but moisten. At the bow of the flying boat was a white-haired late gold core realm old man. This old man's face was full of wrinkles and he looked quite old. However, standing on the flying boat, he was still as straight as a rock. Behind the old man was a beautiful woman. She looked to be in her 20s, but her cultivation was also in the middle gold core realm. As for the cultivator steering the boat, he was only in the foundation establishment realm. The flying boat glided through the air lightly, raising a beautiful arc. The old man's eyes were a little blurred. He swept past the mountain ridge on the left and didn't see Xiaohua stopping in midair. On the contrary, the woman was looking in another direction. However, the moment Xiaohua stopped, she suddenly turned her head and saw Xiaohua's smiling face. But what was strange was that when the woman saw Xiaohua, it was as if she didn't see him. She only slightly raised the corner of her mouth and a bitter smile appeared in her eyes. Then she looked in another direction. However, right when the woman's bright eyes were moving about, she suddenly came to an understanding and hurriedly looked at Xiao Hua again. When her gaze descended into Xiao Hua's slightly red eyes, the woman's eyes suddenly dilated while absolute wild joy surged into her heart. The woman couldn't help but raise her hands to cover her mouth, and then 2 streams of tears flowed down from the corners of her eyes. Xiao Hua. The woman was almost moaning and almost roaring. She barely managed to squeeze Xiao Hua's name from her heart into her mouth. Oh! The old man in the lead was startled. He withdrew his sad gaze and whispered, "What's wrong?" Sun Shu. Xiao Hua. The woman bit her lips so hard that they turned white. She stared at Xiao Hua and pointed at him as she spoke hatefully. Xiao Hua. Only then did the old man look in the direction Sun Shu was pointing at. At this moment, Xiao Hua had already flown over. He bowed from afar and said, "Martial Uncle Zhen Qing, hello." Xiao Hua. You are really Xiao Hua? Zhen Qing was obviously very surprised. He looked at Xiao Hua in disbelief as if he didn't dare to recognize him. However, in just a few breaths, Zhen Qing's figure flashed and actually flew out from the flying boat. He rushed in front of Xiao Hua and scolded, "Child, where have you been all these years?" Martial Uncle. Zhen Qing was the first disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect that Xiao Hua saw after returning to the Dawn Rain continent. Zhen Qing's words immediately pulled out the memories from a long time ago from the depths of his mind. He couldn't hold it in anymore and called out, "Martial Uncle," as tears rolled down his face. "It's good that you're back, it's good that you're back." Zhen Qing's tears also fell. He patted Xiao Hua's shoulder and said, "It's good that you're back alive. Don't cry." "Yes, disciple understands." Xiao Hua sniffed. It really felt like he had returned to the time when he was a low-level disciple. He replied in a low voice. "Senior martial brother." Sun Shu naturally had also flown over. At this time, he stopped crying. His pair of red eyes were like a rabbit's as he stared at Xiao Hua, afraid that he would suddenly disappear again. He only called out, "Senior martial brother," before his mouth was blocked by the excitement of meeting again after a long time. He couldn't say another word. Junior Zhen Yu greets Martial Uncle. The Foundation establishment disciple kept the flying boat and stood at the side. Although he didn't know Xiao Hua's cultivation level, he hurriedly took the opportunity to bow and greet him after hearing Zhen Qing and Sun Shu's greeting. He, quickly get up. There's no need to be polite. Xiao Hua sniffed again and raised his hand to help Zhen Yu up. He said, "This Xiao hasn't seen a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect for a long time. I can't help but forget myself." Yes. Zhen Yu smiled and said, "It's always like this when meeting after a long time." Then, Zhen Yu looked at Yuanya who was behind Xiao Hua and bowed, "Martial Uncle. Vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, gift it, and..." Chapter 5084. Yuanya clearly didn't know how to address this little Foundation establishment cultivator. He could only raise his hand to help Zhen Yu up and said indifferently, "This. Get up." Zhen Qing and Sun Shu naturally only had Xiao Hua in their eyes. Now that they heard Zhen Yu mention him, they finally noticed Yuanya. Zhen Qing hurriedly smiled and said, "May I know how to address this fellow Taoist?" This. Xiao Hua was a bit embarrassed. He regretted that he didn't introduce Yuanya earlier. He coughed and said, "Martial Uncle, this is Junior's disciple. His name is Yuanya." Ah. Zhen Qing and Sun Shu weren't particularly surprised, but Zhen Yu was shocked. He unconsciously glanced at Xiao Hua again. Suddenly, he seemed to have realized something and exclaimed, You are Xiao Hua." Daoist Xiao. After saying that, Zhen Yu disregarded everything and knelt down in the air. He kowtowed and said, Junior Zhen Yu greets Daoist Xiao. Hearing Zhen Yu call him Daoist Xiao, Xiao Hua immediately understood. He smiled and helped Zhen Yu up. Get up. I'm also an ordinary cultivator. I'm not as noble as you think I am. Daoist Xiao, Daoist Xiao. Zhen Yu was clearly very excited. He even talked a bit too much. Although he had already gotten up, he still said, You don't know. Ever since I was born, I've always heard about Daoist Xiao from my father. If it wasn't for Daoist Xiao, nearly 2,000 people in the Jade Cloud Ridge would have starved to death. Seeing that Zhen Yu was going to be long-winded, Xiao Hua hurriedly said, Zhen Yu, this is something from many years ago. Yes, it's been many years. However, according to what this humble one knows, until now, the grains used in the vicinity of the Jade Cloud Ridge were still bestowed by Reverend Xiao back then. Zhen Yu continued speaking persistently. However, when he reached this point, he saw Zhen Qing frowning slightly. He hurriedly stopped speaking and said with a smile, This humble one will stop speaking. This humble one is truly too excited. This humble one has finally met Reverend Xiao, whom this humble one has been praying for day and night. After Zhen Yu retreated to the side, Zhen Qing said with a bitter smile, Xiao Hua, I was so happy to see you that I forgot that you were already a nascent soul cultivator when you left the Imperial Thunder sect. This poor Taoist should be calling you senior now. Martial uncle, your words are too much for this junior. Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand and said, I'm well aware of how you treat me. Not to mention my current cultivation base, even if I reach the Grand Ascension stage, I'm still a junior in front of you. Sigh, forget it. Do as you wish. Zhen Qing sighed and said, This old man's lifespan is about to end. You can call me whatever you want. Sigh, that's right. Senior's luck is a little bad. Xiao Hua looked at Zhen Qing and felt a little helpless. When Xiao Hua entered the Imperial Thunder sect, Zhen Qing was already an early gold core cultivator. It had already been more than 600 years, but Zhen Qing was still only a late gold core cultivator. Now, looking at her lifespan, she only had a few years left. It was really impossible for her to have a baby in this lifetime. Soon after, Xiao Hua looked at Sun Shu. Sun Shu was already at the middle gold core stage. It seemed that his progress in the past few hundred years had been smooth. However, in front of Zhen Qing, Xiao Hua didn't say anything. Sun Shu only nodded at Xiao Hua. With Zhen Yu's interruption, Yuanya didn't greet him. Xiao Hua didn't mention it again. He just smiled and asked, Martial uncle, where are you going? It doesn't seem like you're going to the Imperial Thunder sect. Zhen Qing replied, Sigh, why should I go back to the Imperial Thunder sect? This old man is going to the Blazing Fire Mountain. Blazing Fire Mountain? Xiao Hua was slightly stunned and asked curiously, Why is Martial uncle going to the Blazing Fire Mountain? It's a long story. Zhen Qing smiled bitterly and said, This old man was originally traveling outside and wanted to see if I could find an opportunity during the last period of time. However, after a few years, I received a message from the sect, asking all the disciples to return to the sect for training. However, just as this old man was about to return to the sect, I received a message from Hall Master Zhensheng, asking this old man to take a few disciples to the Blazing Fire Mountain on his behalf. He said that he was returning a favor for him. In the end, Martial Uncle Zhen Qing intercepted I and Zhen Yu on the way and brought us to the Blazing Fire Mountain. Sun Shu smiled like a flower and said, As for why we are going to the Blazing Fire Mountain, we don't know. We only know that when we are near the Blazing Fire Mountain, we will release a messaging talisman and someone called the Fire Qilin will come and pick us up. Hearing about the Blazing Fire Mountain and the Fire Qilin, Xiao Hua seemed to understand something. He thought for a while and said with a smile, Martial uncle, although Hall Master Zhensheng didn't say it clearly in the message, I think Martial uncle should know something about it, right? Sigh, what else can it be? Zhen Qing sighed and said, since the last Sword Dao War, the 3 elders of the Blazing Fire Mountain died in the Sky Patrol City. The Blazing Fire Mountain was divided into 3 factions. They fought with each other to snatch spirit stones and other things. In the past few hundred years, countless people have died. The Blazing Fire Mountain has now become an ordinary sect. I also know about the Fire Qilin. He is the grandson of one of the 3 branches of the Blazing Fire Mountain. Previously, he was not conspicuous and was doted on by the 3 elders of the Blazing Fire Mountain. Later, those who were more senior than him died, and his branch recommended him. If I'm not wrong, this time, he is going to mediate and help. Hall Master Zhen is now a middle nascent soul grandmaster and represents the Shao Lei Hall of the Imperial Thunder sect. It's not appropriate for him to be involved in this matter, so I am going to do it. Sun Shu said with a smile, the current Blazing Fire Mountain is no longer the same as before. Cultivators in the late Gold Core realm are rare. Martial Uncle Zhen is enough. Sun Shu looked at Xiaohua and said in a low voice, not long after Martial Brother was expelled from the Imperial Thunder sect, the former sect master Qian Lei Zi came out of seclusion. Former sect master. Xiaohua was stunned and asked curiously, isn't Qian Lei Zi the sect master now? Sun Shu nodded and said, yes. When Martial Brother left the Imperial Thunder sect, senior Qian Lei Zi had entered the late nascent soul realm. About 70 years ago, senior Qian Lei Zi failed to break through to the severed divinity realm and died. Now, the middle nascent soul realm fairy Xian Hua is the sect master. Sun Shu hesitated because fairy Xian Hua was the one who expelled Xiaohua from the Imperial Thunder sect. He was afraid that Xiaohua would bear a grudge. Sure enough, hearing that fairy Xian Hua was the sect master, Xiaohua sneered. Seeing Xiaohua's reaction, Sun Shu hurriedly said, Martial Brother, I don't know where you have been for the past several hundred years. However, senior Qian Lei Zi had just come out of seclusion and issued a pardon order, asking Thunder Meng Dao Master to chase after you with the pardon order. He wanted to take you back into the sect, but Thunder Meng Dao Master couldn't find you. As for the specific situation, I'm afraid only senior nascent soul realm knows. However, Martial Brother, the current Imperial Thunder sect, has declined. You are so powerful, and there are fortune gates all over the 3 countries. I think, you should return to the Imperial Thunder sect. If Master Qian Lei Zi was still the sect master, or if Reverend Lei Meng was still the sect master, Xiaohua might have considered Sun Shu's suggestion. However, after hearing that fairy Xian Hua had become the sect master, how could Xiaohua still return to Imperial Thunder sect? He smiled and said, Martial Brother has just returned. I want to see an old friend and reminisce about the past. Let's talk about this later. All right. Sun Shu also understood that spilled water couldn't be undone. He forced a smile and said, where is Martial Brother going? I will send Martial Brother off. Oh, I don't have a fixed place. Xiaohua smiled and said, it's just that I haven't seen the scenery of the state of Shi for a long time. Hee, that's great. Sun Shu pursed his lips and said, if Martial Brother has nothing to do, why don't you take a trip to the Ardent Fire Mountain with Martial Uncle Zhen Qing? With Martial Brother there, we can be at ease. Hearing this, Zhen Qing's eyes lit up and he said with a smile, good. Come with this old man. Several hundred years have passed. Perhaps not many people can remember the mysterious nameless sword battle. However, you were already a nascent soul realm cultivator at that time. I'm afraid you are even more powerful now. You can give this old man some courage. All right. Xiaohua nodded and said, Junior has nothing to do anyway. I'll accompany Martial Uncle. That's right. Zhen Qing pulled Xiaohua's robe and ordered Zhen Yu to release the flying boat. He said, in a few years, even if you want to accompany this old man, I'm afraid you won't be able to find me. Sun Shu's face was also full of smiles. He turned to look at Yuanya and said, Yuanya, what's your master's cultivation now? Late nascent soul realm? This. Yuanya rubbed his nose and thought for a moment before saying, Martial uncle, you should ask master about this matter. Sun Shu smiled and said, senior brother likes to keep a low profile. From what you said, even if he isn't late nascent soul realm, I'm afraid he isn't far from it. No wonder he doesn't want to return to Imperial Thunder Sect. Oh, right, you can just call me Sun Shu. I call you senior brother because we used to be senior brother and junior sister. I'm used to calling you that. You and I are both Golden Core Realm cultivators. You can just call me fellow Taoist. All right. Yuanya didn't stand on ceremony and nodded in agreement. Seeing that everyone had boarded the flying boat, Zhen Yu shouted and urged the flying boat to continue flying in the direction of Ardent Fire Mountain. Xiao Hua stood beside Zhen Qing. He stole a glance at Zhen Qing's white hair and asked in a low voice, Martial uncle, Junior remembers that when I left Imperial Thunder Sect, didn't I tell Martial uncle about Sun Xian? Why? Alas, it's all in the past. It's meaningless to mention it again. Zhen Qing's wrinkled face showed bitterness. He waved his hand to stop Xiao Hua from continuing. He asked again, but you, where have you been for the past few hundred years? Looking at your cultivation, it seems to be even more powerful than before. Oh, not to mention you, even this disciple of yours is more powerful than this old man. Junior obtained a little opportunity. Xiao Hua replied, now, I'm indeed more powerful than before, but, in other words, they had reached here. Woo woo. The sound of wind whistling could be heard in the distant sky. Soon after, the pressure of an early nascent soul stage cultivator surged out like a gale and swept towards the flying boat. Wherever the pressure passed, rocks were overturned and trees were toppled. The brilliance of the flying boat was also rapidly extinguished. Zhen Qing, Sun Shu, and Zhen Yu naturally couldn't resist the aura. Zhen Yu collapsed on the flying boat and let it roll over. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip. Chapter 5085. Who is it? Xiao Hua pretended to roar and released his spiritual pressure. The two spiritual pressures collided with each other. Bang, bang, bang. A series of explosions sounded and ripples appeared in the void nearby. Xiao Hua then used his magic power again to stabilize the flying boat. With Xiao Hua's spiritual pressure resisting, Zhen Qing and Sun Shu struggled to stand up. They looked at the sky and saw another flying boat. There were more than 10 people standing on the flying boat. In the front were a male and female early nascent soul stage cultivators. The male cultivator was middle-aged and wore armor. He held a spear-like magic treasure in his hand. As for the female cultivator, she was only in her 20s. She was as beautiful as a flower. Her big watery eyes were looking at Xiao Hua and Zhen Qing with surprise and disdain on her face. Wasn't this female cultivator Chen Yi of Buried Flower Manor? You. Seeing Chen Yi appear, Zhen Qing was a bit angry. He raised his hand and pointed at her. Chen Yi, what are you doing? I already told you that I don't want to see you again in this life. Chen Yi glanced at Zhen Qing indifferently and said, Zhen Qing, the past is the past. There's no need to mention it again. To be honest, I didn't expect to meet you here today. But since we've already met, then why don't we settle our grudges here? Us? It seems that us also includes me. Xiao Hua looked at Chen Yi and said coldly, I wonder what grudges you have with me. Ha! Chen Yi laughed and withdrew the pressure of an early-stage nascent soul cultivator. She looked even more beautiful after being pregnant. She laughed and said, there are so many people in this world who think too highly of themselves. You are the famous Taoist Xiao of Dawn Rain Continent, but in the eyes of my Tongmu city, you are nothing. The grudges between you and me, don't you know? Now that you've walked into the trap, everything that happened before, let's settle it today. At this point, Chen looked into the distance and shouted, "Bitch, why don't you come out? Do you want me to capture you personally before you show yourself?" Who? Zhen Qing heard and felt that something was wrong. He hurriedly looked in that direction. Sure enough, a faint brilliance flashed in the distant sky. Sun Qian, who had a slightly elegant temperament and a stubborn look, appeared. At this time, Sun Qian was only in her 30s. There were no more scars on her face. She had a noble and pure temperament, and had a unique charm. Seeing Sun Qian appear, Zhen Qing hurriedly shouted, "You, why are you here? Why aren't you running?" Alas! Sun Qian let out a long sigh as she looked at Zhen Qing with a complicated expression. After that, she flew in front of Zhen Qing and stood in front of Zhen Qing. Facing Chen Yi, Sun Qian said coldly, "Chen Yi, actually, the thing between you and Zhen Qing is nothing serious. You only need to tell Qing Liuzi the details, damn it." Without waiting for Sun Qian to finish speaking, Chen Yi cursed in a low voice, "Sun Qian, you dare to plant spies in Tongmu City?" It was as if Sun Qian was not facing a nascent soul cultivator. She said coldly, "If I didn't, how would I know that you wanted to kill Zhen Qing to avoid suspicion?" Ha! Chen Yi's face suddenly changed. She laughed and said, "Sun Qian, is your informant Chong? You?" Suddenly, Sun Qian seemed to realize something. She raised her hand and pointed at Sun Qian. "You're too cunning. You're killing 3 birds with 1 stone. You want to kill Zhen Qing, Jing Chong and me at the same time." He. Chen Yi smiled and nodded. "Sun Qian, you've been fighting with me for a lifetime. But now, your last sentence is the most correct. I wanted to praise you, but I didn't expect Taoist Master Shao to walk into the trap. My plan of killing 3 birds with 1 stone has become killing 4 birds with 1 stone. You're still wrong. AI, Zhen Qing." Hearing this, Sun Qian turned her head slightly. Looking at Zhen Qing's white hair, she smiled bitterly. "It's all my fault. If I'd just backed off a little and sent you a message." "There's no need for that." Zhen Qing looked at the dozen cultivators on the Twilight Tong City's flying boat surrounding them. The early-stage nascent soul-stage male cultivator stood beside Chen Yi with a spear magic artifact in his hand. The fear in her heart gradually disappeared and she said faintly, "I don't have much time left to live. Today, I was able to see her true face. This trip was not in vain." Sun Qian looked at Zhen Qing. She bit her lips and said word by word, "Being able to die with you, this life of mine was not made in vain." Humph. Chen Yi's face twisted. It was as if she couldn't bear to see others get better. She smiled maliciously and said, "Then all of you can die together." After saying this, Chen Yi raised her hand and was about to give the order. Sun Qian held Zhen Qing's hand. She looked at Xiao Hua apologetically and said, "Taoist Master Xiao, I didn't thank you back then. Today, I've implicated you. I can only say sorry." "It's fine, it's fine." Xiao Hua smiled and said, "My matter is really nothing. The matter between you and Martial Uncle Zhen is more important. Previously, I wanted to ask you what you've been thinking for the past hundreds of years. Why did you waste hundreds of years? But now that I see that you're willing to live and die with Martial Uncle Zhen, I feel that, as long as there's true love, as long as we know each other, there's no need to care about time." At this point, Xiao Hua looked coldly at Chen Yi and said, "Unlike some people who have long abandoned their human emotions. For power, they sold their soul and body." Ha! Chen Yi looked at Xiao Hua and laughed loudly. "Taoist Master Xiao, so what if I sold my soul and body? Look at the 2 of them. In the past, their cultivation was higher than mine. But now, they're only golden core stage cultivators. Each of them is struggling at death's door, waiting for the end of their lifespans. As for me, I've already become a nascent soul stage cultivator. When their corpses turn into ashes, I'll still be living freely in Twilight Tong City. Yes, you seem to be living freely, but in reality? Whether you're a walking corpse or not. I'm afraid only you know, right? Xiao Hua mocked. The corner of Chen Yi's mouth curled up in disdain as she said, Xiao Hua, don't flaunt your sharp tongue. No matter how fierce your words are, you won't be able to escape today's calamity. Ah! Xiao Hua was shocked. How did I offend you? You actually want to take my life? Taoist Master Xiao, why are you pretending to be confused? Chen Yi sneered. Do you know how powerful the Fortune Gate is in the three countries? Everyone respects you, Taoist Master Xiao. If my Twilight Tong City captures the real Taoist Master Xiao, then wouldn't the Fortune Gate of the three countries be controlled by my Twilight Tong City? Do you think I'll cooperate with you? Xiao Hua said sarcastically. The corner of Chen Yi's mouth twitched, and she said decisively, if you don't cooperate, then die. A dead Taoist Master Xiao naturally can't compare to a living Taoist Master Xiao. However, a Fortune Gate controlled by someone is the biggest threat to my Twilight Tong City. With that said, Chen Yi didn't delay any longer, and she ordered, Taoist I Ching, you and I will work together to capture Xiao Hua. Disciples, kill everyone else. Don't let anyone else know about this. Yes. Several disciples answered in unison. They circulated their magic power and charged toward Xiao Hua. AI. Xiao Hua sighed helplessly as he looked at the group of Twilight Tong City's disciples and Chen Yi. He said, it's easy to change mountains and rivers, but it's hard to change one's nature. Even 600 years is not enough to fill a person's greed. Since greed is hard to fill, then there's no need to fill it. Yeah, do it. Xiao Hua pointed his finger at Yuanya, and a shadow of light fell into Yuanya's body. Kacha. A thunderous sound came from Yuanya's body. Chen Yi had already discovered Zhen Qing in Sun Qian's presence, so she had a plan to settle this old grudge, so as to avoid a rift between her and Twilight Tong City's city lord Qing Liuzi. Xiao Hua's appearance was indeed unexpected. Others might not know Xiao Hua's strength, but Chen Yi did know a little. Whether it was the terrifying phoenix in the sword battle or Wu Ming in the nascent soul realm, Chen Yi was quite wary of both of them. However, Chen Yi wasn't willing to give up such an excellent opportunity. She and Taoist I Ching from Dawntree City secretly observed Xiao Hua. The two of them discovered that Xiao Hua was only at the early nascent soul stage. Chen Yi alone might not be his match, but if the two of them joined forces, it was very likely that they could capture Xiao Hua. Of course, the impression Xiao Hua had left on Chen Yi was too deep. Chen Yi was still hesitant, but just as Chen Yigong had said, a fortune gate controlled by someone was more terrifying than an uncontrolled fortune gate. After weighing the pros and cons, the two of them still chose to attack. Xiao Hua's calmness did not exceed Chen Yi's expectations, but she really did not understand why Xiao Hua did not attack her, but instead turned around to attack the golden core cultivator beside her. However, when the thunderous sound came from Yuanya's body, an even more majestic pressure soared into the sky, and then rushed out in all directions like a flood. Yuanya's aura rose steadily, and in a few breaths' time, he was already as tall as a mountain, and his figure was indomitable like a demon god. Chen Yi finally came to her senses, and her face turned ashen in an instant. Compared to Yuanya's aura, her nascent soul aura couldn't even compare to a trickle. Damn it, run! Chen Yi cursed under her breath. She didn't have time to give an order, and her figure was about to teleport away. Unfortunately, in front of Yuanya, who had stepped into the 8th grade, Chen Yi, who had just broken through to the 4th grade, was not even comparable to a child. How could she possibly escape from Yuanya's hands? Seeing that the void around her had been sealed, and she couldn't see even a trace of heaven and earth spiritual energy, and her body was as heavy as 10,000 caddies, she couldn't even move. Chen Yi's heart turned cold, and her thoughts raced as she shouted, Taoist Xiao, the merciful and compassionate Taoist Xiao, this servant knows her wrongs. This servant will not dare to do it again, please spare this servant. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a tip, and... Chapter 5086. Xiao Hua and the others heard Chen Yi's words clearly. Xiao Hua shook his head slightly and said word by word, some people can be forgiven, but some people can't be forgiven. Forgiving a good person who made a mistake can reap good results, but forgiving a bad person who came to his senses can only reap bad results. Chen Yi still wanted to argue, but Yuanya had already taken out his devil spear. Woo! Woo! Devil Qi surged out amidst the cries of ghosts and howls of wolves. It had already covered 100 miles around them. In the blink of an eye, all the evil Qi, all the schemes, all the grudges, and all the schemes turned into nothing. The dragon-like devil spear was retracted, and the thousands of layers of devil Qi were also absorbed into the devil spear. Under the devil Qi, Zhen Qing and the others were revealed. Yuanya's spear had already shocked them. They had never thought that there would be such powerful cultivators in the world. Those were two nascent soul masters, dozens of Golden Core Realm and Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators. They were much stronger than an ordinary sect. In just one spear strike, they had all turned into ashes. I've let you be stained with blood again. Xiao Hua looked at Yuanya retracting his devil spear and suppressing his cultivation. Xiao Hua sighed and said, but if I were to do it, I wouldn't be able to do it. Master is benevolent and doesn't like blood. Moreover, they are too weak. How can I let Master do it? Let disciple do it for you. Yuanya said nonchalantly, this kind of slaughter is also beneficial to disciples' cultivation. And, Master understands. Xiao Hua said and once again sealed Yuanya's cultivation to the Golden Core Realm. Taoist Master. It really is Taoist Master Xiao. The unparalleled Taoist Master Xiao. Unlike Zhen Qing and the others who were panicking, Zhen Yu was filled with reverence. He couldn't help but exclaim, with Taoist Master, our fortune gate will definitely be the number one. Suddenly, Zhen Yu realized that it was inappropriate and quickly shut his mouth. He looked at Zhen Qing awkwardly. Xiao Hua frowned and looked at Zhen Yu. What do you mean? Are you a spy sent by the fortune gate to the Imperial Lightning Sect? Zhen Yu hurriedly knelt down and said, Tao Master, Junior is indeed a disciple of the Imperial Lightning Sect, not a disciple of the Fortune Gate. However, this Junior's family has received Taoist Master's grace, and this Junior's family regards Taoist Master as a living Holy Spirit. Although this Junior cannot enter the Fortune Gate, this Junior, like many other cultivators, regards himself as a Fortune Gate disciple. See. Xiao Hua suddenly realized something and sucked in a breath of cold air. He already understood why Chen Yi, who clearly knew that he was Xiao Hua and didn't have any confidence, insisted on attacking him. Even if she couldn't capture him, she still wanted to kill him. Senior. Sun Qian hurriedly said, please don't blame Zhen Yu. This situation happened in the Dao cultivation sects of the three cultivation nations. No, it even happened in the sword sect of the Huan nation. After all, enlightened Master's grace back then, spread throughout the entire world. Xiao Hua nodded and said, this old man understands. If it was someone else, perhaps they wouldn't have so much momentum, but this old man's cultivation method is a bit special. At this point, Xiao Hua suddenly realized that something was wrong and hurriedly said with a smile, Sun Qian, you don't have to call me senior, just call me Taoist Xiao. Yes, Taoist Xiao. A shy look appeared on Sun Qian's pretty face. However, she did not loosen her grip on Zhen Qing's hand. Sun Qian had used her strength as her armor and stubbornness to protect herself all her life. When she tore her mask off, she cherished the affection she had just received more than anyone else. Senior brother. Sun Shu said with a slight groan, Aren't you too low-key? I thought you were at most a cultivator in the middle or late nascent soul stage, but I didn't expect your disciple to be so powerful. I don't even know what realm he is at. What realm are you at? Xiao Hua looked at Sun Shu with a smile and said, Is it important what realm I am at? The important thing is that no matter what realm I am at, I am still your senior brother, okay? Hee, I like that. Sun Shu giggled and said, Unfortunately, just as Sun Shu said those two words, the expression in her eyes changed and she didn't continue. Instead, she changed the topic and said, If senior brother gives me some more benefits, I will like it even more. Hee, isn't that simple? Xiao Hua didn't hesitate and took out a storage pouch and handed it to her, This is for you. Senior brother, I was just joking. Sun Shu was naturally joking. She wanted to cover up what she almost said just now, but seeing that Xiao Hua took it seriously, she was a little embarrassed. Xiao Hua smiled and said, Even if you didn't say it, I would still give it to you. We haven't seen each other for so many years, no matter what, there should be some greeting gift, right? Hee, then thank you senior brother. Sun Shu and Xiao Hua had experience together, so she naturally knew Xiao Hua's temper. She didn't hold back and casually took the storage pouch and put it away without looking at it. Xiao Hua then looked at Zhen Qing, who had been silent all this time, and thought for a moment before saying, Martial uncle, Junior won't give you cultivation techniques or golden cores for the time being. Junior will give you some spiritual items to replenish your lifespan first. Once your lifespan is replenished, Junior will help you conceive a baby. After you conceive a baby, everything will be fine. As he said that, Xiao Hua took out a few immortal peaches and gave them to Zhen Qing, Sun Qian, and even Sun Shu and Zhen Yu. Spiritual master, what is this? Zhen Yu held the immortal peach and was a little puzzled. He asked, This thing can replenish my lifespan. This is an immortal peach. Xiao Hua explained, It can replenish some of your lifespan, but it varies from person to person. Of course, you don't need it now, so you might as well keep it first and use it later. Your task now is to clean up the storage pouches and flying boats of the cultivators of Tongmu City and hand them over to Martial Uncle Zhen Qing. Okay. Zhen Yu was overjoyed when he heard that. He kept the immortal peach and happily went to clean up the mess. Should I keep it too? Sun Shu thought for a moment and said, After all, I have already taken the rejuvenation pill before. Eat it. Xiao Hua said in a low voice, I have a lot of these things here. Just treat it as a taste of something new. Xiao Hua's words made Sun Shu recall some memories. She held back the redness in her eyes and nodded, Yes, senior martial brother. Then, she took a bite of the immortal peach and let the sweet juice and the joy of reunion seep into her heart. Zhen Qing looked at Xiao Hua with a complicated gaze. Back then, he was the first to discover that Xiao Hua was Wu Ming. That kind of shock hadn't happened for hundreds of years. Now that he met Xiao Hua again, the shock was 100 times stronger than before. He didn't know how to face this high-level cultivator who was so respectful to him. Xiao Hua's disciple could easily kill nascent soul Chen Yi. Xiao Hua's strength. Perhaps even the Imperial Thunder Sect Master couldn't compare to him. Of course, other than being shocked, Zhen Qing also felt guilty about Chen Yi's death. Zhen Qing was an indecisive person, but at the same time, he was also a sentimental person. Because of this, he had delayed himself and delayed Sun Qian. Now, Chen Yi died in front of him. In an instant, all the memories of his life with Chen Yi flooded his mind. No one knew Zhen Qing better than Sun Qian. Sun Qian didn't say anything and just silently looked at Zhen Qing. This was the so-called deep hatred of love. After half a cup of tea, Zhen Yu returned and respectfully handed over some storage bags. He said, Martial ancestor, oh. Zhen Qing came back to his senses and responded. He looked at the storage bags and asked, Zhen Yu, where are the corpses of the cultivators in Twilight Tong City? Why are they gone? Martial ancestor. Zhen Yu hurriedly replied, disciple didn't see any corpses. There were only storage bags, magic tools, flying boats and other things. Martial uncle, don't worry. Xiao Hua hurriedly explained, although the corpses are gone, Yuanya only killed them and didn't erase their primordial spirits. The souls of these cultivators have already entered the cycle of reincarnation. Sigh, alright, I understand. Zhen Qing sighed and said to Zhen Yu, these are all Daoist Zhaos. It's better to let Daoist Xiao take them. Xiao Hua smiled and said, martial ancestor, the so-called knot in one's heart is something that can't be removed. Since that's the case, it's better to put it aside. It's useless to think too much about it. As for these mortal things, I gave them to martial ancestor. Martial ancestor didn't like them, so I'll let Zhen Yu take them first and distribute them to martial ancestor's disciples later. Will do as Daoist Xiao said. Sun Qian couldn't stand it anymore. She clenched her hand and said, let Zhen Yu take them first. Yes, I understand. When Zhen Yu heard that, he happily kept the storage pouch. Sun Shu urged, martial ancestor, quick, this immortal peach is very good. As he said that, Sun Shu casually looked through the storage bags that Xiao Hua gave him. When he looked through them, he was so shocked that he couldn't close his mouth. Xiao Hua noticed it and turned to look at Sun Shu. He nodded his head slightly. Sun Shu also smiled and carefully hid the storage bags. Since Zhen Qing didn't eat the immortal peach, Sun Qian naturally wouldn't eat it either. Although Zhen Qing's mood wasn't good, he still ate the immortal peach. Zhen Qing's cultivation was shallow and he couldn't feel that his lifespan was being replenished. However, when the immortal peach entered his mouth, a warm current rushed through his body. The warm feeling came from his heart. Zhen Qing. Sun Qian exclaimed, your hair, what's wrong? Zhen Qing didn't expect the immortal peach's effect to be so obvious. He didn't react for a moment and asked in astonishment. The heavens have eyes. Sun Qian was so happy that she cried. She hurriedly waved her right hand and a mirror appeared. In the mirror, Zhen Qing's white hair turned black and the wrinkles on his forehead also calmed down. Of course, after a few breaths, his hair stopped turning black and returned to the familiar white color. But even so, Xiao Hua understood that Zhen Qing's lifespan had been replenished. As long as Zhen Qing stepped into the nascent soul realm within 100 years, he wouldn't have a problem living for another 1,000 years. Vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, gift it, and... Chapter 5087. Alas, it's no wonder that cultivators risk their lives and use unscrupulous means to advance. Xiao Hua sighed with emotion as he inwardly said, the lifespan of an ordinary aura refining cultivator is only 200 years. When they advance to the foundation building realm, their lifespan will increase to 400 years. When they advance to the gold core realm, their lifespan will increase to 800 years. When they condense their nascent soul and communicate with heaven and earth, their lifespan will even increase to 2,000 years. In the face of such temptation, who would be able to maintain their Tao heart? Not only that, just as Sun Qian finished speaking, Sun Qian herself was startled. She looked at Zhen Qing in disbelief. Zhen Qing didn't understand. Xiao Hua, who was at the side, smiled and said, congratulations, fellow Taoist. Since the knot in your heart is gone and your Tao realm has improved, you will definitely be pregnant within 10 years. Is that so? Zhen Qing smiled and looked at Sun Qian, your wish has finally come true. Isn't it because... Sun Qian was about to reply, but Zhen Qing's body suddenly trembled, and a surprised expression appeared on her face. Xiao Hua had no choice but to congratulate him once again. Congratulations, martial uncle. Since you're able to let go, you'll be able to jump out of this world. Within 10 years you'll definitely be able to conceive a nascent soul. Sun Qian and Zhen Qing had been trapped in love for a long time, but they couldn't compare to Chen Yi who had severed their love long ago, so they couldn't conceive a baby for a long time. Now that Xiao Hua had killed Chen Yi, the knot in their hearts was forcibly broken. Especially, the immortal peaches were the essence of heaven and earth. After the two of them ate the immortal peaches, the laws of heaven and earth had already quietly merged into their Jindan. Conceiving a baby was only a matter of time. Congratulations martial uncle, congratulations martial uncle. Sun Shu and Zhen Yu hurriedly went up to congratulate her. Zhen Qing's character was upright and she had always loved and cared for her disciples. Thus, Zhen Yu and the others congratulated her from the bottom of their hearts. Zhen Qing, who had just escaped death, smiled and helped the two of them up. He smiled and said, "This old man is useless. I haven't had a breakthrough in my cultivation for a long time. You two need to work harder. Don't be like this old man." "Yes, we understand." Sun Shu and Zhen Yu stood up. Zhen Qing then looked at Xiao Hua and asked, "Daoist, are you still going with us to the Ardent Fire Mountain?" It seemed like Zhen Qing had already understood that it wasn't a coincidence that Xiao Hua had met him. Xiao Hua smiled. Since Zhen Qing didn't point it out, he wouldn't explain either. Thus, he replied, "Of course, this junior does indeed have some karma with the Ardent Fire Mountain. This time, I might as well settle it. Alright, with Shenren, this old man has a plan in mind. This time, we won't embarrass the Imperial Thunder Sect." Zhen Qing said with relief. "Senior uncle, please." Seeing that Zhen Yu had already released the flying boat, Xiao Hua hurriedly invited Zhen Qing onto the flying boat. Zhen Qing hesitated for a moment, but she didn't decline. She nodded and pulled Xiao Hua onto the flying boat. Sun Qian carefully followed behind. It was rare for someone as stubborn as her to be so obedient. The flying boat once again soared into the sky. Sun Shu asked curiously from the side, "Senior apprentice brother, why do you still have a dispute with the Ardent Fire Mountain? Are they the three elders of the Ardent Fire Mountain that I met during the Great Sword Battle?" "Oh, it's a long story." Seeing that the airboat was not moving fast, Xiao Hua knew that there was still a long way to go before they arrived at the Ardent Fire Mountain. Although he didn't need to talk about the three continents, it didn't matter if he told Xue Xue about his experiential learning. Therefore, he told her about his fate with the Ardent Fire Mountain. Since Xiao Hua took the initiative to mention Xue Xue, Sun Shu also couldn't avoid it. After Xiao Hua finished speaking, Sun Shu probed, "Senior apprentice brother, do you already know about senior apprentice sister?" Xue Xue was a foundation establishment disciple and Wu Hen was a golden core cultivator. Both of them had life spirit tablets in the Imperial Thunder Sect. When the two of them died, the Imperial Thunder Sect would discover it. Therefore, Sun Shu already knew that Xue Xue was no longer in this world. Xiao Hua nodded. "Xue Xue died for me. How come I didn't know about it? Senior apprentice sister is really powerful." Sun Shu suddenly understood something and whispered, "I can't compare with her." "There's no need to compare." Xiao Hua smiled and said, "Everyone is different. Just be yourself." "Wu Hen?" Zhen Qing asked. "The two of us are the same." Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said, "That day when Junior left the Imperial Thunder Sect, Junior discovered that two nascent soul cultivators were chasing Junior. Junior was unable to escape no matter how hard Junior tried. In the end, Master and Xue Xue suddenly appeared and self-detonated to trap the two of them. Junior was able to escape." Zhen Qing frowned. Clearly, she didn't understand why Xue Xue and Wu Hen suddenly appeared. However, Xiao Hua was a member of the government. Zhen Qing couldn't not believe his words. Moreover, this involved the two people closest to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua definitely wouldn't lie. Therefore, Zhen Qing continued to ask, what about the two nascent soul cultivators? Why were they chasing you? Those two nascent soul cultivators have already fallen. Xiao Hua replied, from the beginning to the end, they didn't reveal their identity. Junior doesn't know who they are and also doesn't know why they were chasing Junior. Damn it! Zhen Qing recalled that day when Xiao Hua was expelled from the Imperial Thunder sect and was chased by two nascent soul cultivators. Her heart was filled with anger and she cursed in a low voice. What about now? Sun Qian was also worried about Xiao Hua and asked. Xiao Hua pursed his lips and smiled, this is the reason why Junior wanted to hide his cultivation. This Junior wants to know, who is it that is so interested in this Junior? Sun Shu said curiously, Senior Brother has already seen those two nascent soul cultivators. With Senior Brother's current strength, it shouldn't be difficult for you to find those two missing nascent soul cultivators, right? And, this is of course simple. Xiao Hua nodded. However, Senior Brother still has more important things to do. Moreover, this matter. Senior Brother doesn't need to do it personally. Presumably, someone has already investigated it. Senior Brother can just find someone to ask. What Senior Brother wants to do now is to find the mastermind behind these missing nascent soul cultivators. Senior Brother wants to lure the snake out of its hole. Sun Shu understood and said with a smile, Senior Brother has always been low-key. Even for such an important matter, you still handle it this way. There are many ways to solve this problem. Xiao Hua said with a smile, with Senior Brother's current strength, it's even easier. Senior Brother can find the truth with any method. Senior Brother just casually found one. That's true. Sun Shu glanced at Yuanya who didn't speak much and said with some jealousy, Senior Brother has such a powerful disciple who can casually sweep across the Dawn Rain continent. Then there's no need to care about the method. After saying that, Sun Shu was curious and asked, Senior Brother, how many of such disciples do you have? Not many, only 6. Xiao Hua didn't hide and replied with a smile. Ah. So many. Sun Shu said in surprise, are they as powerful as Yuanya? And, more or less. Xiao Hua knew that this was a chat and said without hiding anything, some are more powerful than him, and some are worse than him. Senior Brother, you really have the momentum of sweeping across the Dawn Rain continent. Sun Shu couldn't help but cry out, then her eyes turned and asked tentatively, how about this, Senior Brother, you let your disciple accept me as a disciple? Sun Shu's feelings for Xiao Hua were also deep, but in front of Xue Xue, Sun Shu still tactfully hid these thoughts. Now that Xue Xue had fallen, Sun Shu was even more moved by Xue Xue's fearless love. Her love couldn't help but sprout, so this sentence was also a kind of test. Who knew that Xiao Hua's reaction was far beyond her expectations? Xiao Hua raised his hand slightly and placed it on Sun Shu's head, rubbing her hair and said with a smile, you are this Xiao's little sister. What do you want to cultivate, this Senior Brother can teach you. Why do you need to take them as your master? Logically speaking, they should be able to call you Martial Aunt. Yes, Senior Brother, this junior sister understands. Sun Shu's heart ached. She knew that she couldn't be compared to Xue Xue in this life. Although she agreed, the disappointment in her heart was far greater than the joy in her mouth. Seeing Xiao Hua cut off Sun Shu's feelings so neatly, Sun Qian at the side sighed with emotion. She looked at Zhen Qing beside her and understood that if Zhen Qing was like this a few years ago, things wouldn't have ended up like this. However, looking at Sun Shu's disappointment and thinking about her own gains, Sun Qian sighed with emotion and also felt happy. Zhen Qing pondered, but she only put this thought aside and asked with a smile, Xiao Hua, where have you been cultivating in seclusion these past few years? Why is there no news at all? In other realms. Xiao Hua knew that Zhen Qing was concerned, but he still smiled and said, this matter will be known by Martial Uncle in the future. This junior won't waste time talking about it. Okay. Zhen Qing nodded. Xiao Hua was afraid that he would ask too much, so he thought for a moment and said, "Martial uncle, back then, you gave this junior your understanding of core condensation, which was extremely helpful to this junior's cultivation. Now that this junior has taken a step earlier, I will also share my understanding with martial uncle. Yeah, you steer the boat and let Zhen point out the direction." "Yes, master." Yuanya replied and asked for the direction of Ardent Fire Mountain. He urged the flying boat to fly faster than before. Zhen Qing, Sun Qian, Sun Shu and Zhen Yu sat on the flying boat and listened to Xiao Hua's detailed explanation. Xiao Hua's explanation was naturally different from the others. He could see the flaws in each person's cultivation and where they needed to be supplemented. Therefore, although it seemed that he was talking to the four of them, each of them listened as if he was exhorting them. They really benefited a lot. Even after 10 days, when Ardent Fire Mountain was already in sight, they were still immersed in the enlightenment and did not hear anything. Xiao Hua stopped and said with a smile, "Martial uncle, we are already near Ardent Fire Mountain. You can inform the Fire Qilin now." Zhen Qing and the others were listening to the wonderful part. Xiao Hua suddenly stopped and felt a little embarrassed. Sun Shu could not help but beg, "Senior martial brother, please talk for another half a day. This little sister is listening with enthusiasm." Unfortunately, Xiao Hua shook his head and said, "It's not that I don't want to talk, but this kind of explanation is far from ending. If I don't talk about it until you step into the Mahayana realm and ascend to the immortal realm, you will never feel satisfied. Then how about another half a day?" Zhen Qing could not help but ask. "Okay." Xiao Hua pondered for a moment, nodded and started talking again. Sure enough, half a day passed very quickly. When Xiao Hua stopped talking, the four of them still felt that they were not satisfied. Without waiting for Sun Shu to speak, Xiao Hua said with a smile, "In the future, if I establish a sect in the Dawn Rain continent, I will definitely hold a forum and give lectures. If you all want to listen, you can go at that time. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote, vote for a recommendation vote, bookmark, gift, and thank you for all kinds of support." Chapter 5088. Alas! Zhen Yu sighed and said, "It's only today that Junior understands what it means to gladly endure hardships. Previously, when Junior was cultivating, there were often things that Junior didn't understand. Sometimes, the master who taught me didn't explain it clearly, which made Junior feel that the path of cultivation was really difficult. But now, after listening to Daoist's lecture, I feel that the path of cultivation is really bright." "You think too much." Xiao Hua responded and said to Zhen Qing, "Martial uncle, send out the summoning talisman. If we delay any longer, there might be other cultivators coming to the Ardent Fire Mountain." "Okay." Zhen Qing glanced at Xiao Hua and knew that he had already discovered other cultivators. She quickly took out the summoning talisman and activated it with her magic power. The summoning talisman flew into the distant Crimson Mountain range and disappeared. Seeing the summoning talisman disappear, Zhen Qing was about to ask who the other cultivators were when a thought suddenly appeared in his mind. He couldn't help but bite his lips because he already understood that Xiao Hua's appearance wasn't just a coincidence. It might even be intentional. Xiao Hua wanted to test Chen Yi. Alas, this is fate. Zhen Qing sighed inwardly. Chen Yi has been scheming against others all her life, but I didn't expect that she would fall into someone else's scheme today. No, it should be said that this is someone else's test. If she was a little bit more sentimental, she wouldn't have ended up in this state. Zhen Qing, who was easily sentimental, fell into a state of longing again and didn't say anything. In the sky, other than the flying boat, there was only the whistling of the mountain wind. The mountain peak here was different from other places. Other than the mountain rocks being crimson red, the ground was also crimson red. On the ground, there was a type of plant that was more than a foot tall. This plant's stem was red, and between the branches and leaves, there was a spiral shape. Layer after layer of light red was stained on the surface like smoke. When the wind blew, the red leaves danced, as if they were covered in flames. On the mountain peak, there were also tall pine trees. These pine trees were also red. Although the red of the pine trees wasn't as bright as the red of the ground and was somewhat dark, the red was dense like blood. When the mountain wind whistled, the pine trees swayed, and the crimson color danced. Amidst the crimson color, a fiery red flying shuttle that could only accommodate one person flew out from the mountain range. When the flying shuttle landed, an aura refining disciple jumped down from the shuttle. Looking at everyone, he didn't dare to neglect and bowed respectfully. Junior is Huafeng from the Ardent Fire Mountain. Get up. Zhen Qing collected her thoughts and helped Huafeng up with a smile. We are disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect. We rushed here after receiving the Fire Qilan's message. Bring us to him. Huafeng stood up and looked at the crowd. He smiled and said, Seniors, may I know which one of you is Ancestor Zhen? Oh, because my Imperial Thunder Sect has some important matters to attend to, Martial Ancestor Zhen can't come personally, so he sent us over. Sun Shu frowned and answered for Zhen Qing. Then. Huafeng was still unwilling to give up and asked, which Grandmaster is a nascent soul Grandmaster? No nascent soul Grandmaster from my Imperial Thunder Sect has come. Sun Shu was somewhat displeased and said, if the Fire Qilan doesn't welcome the disciples of the Imperial Lightning Sect, then we will return and report to Ancestor Zhen. Senior, please forgive me. Huafeng was sent by the Fire Qilan to welcome them, so he was naturally eloquent. He hurriedly replied, Junior didn't mean that. Junior doesn't know if my Grandmaster made it clear in the message he sent to Ancestor Zhen, but the current situation in the Ardent Fire Mountain is somewhat complicated. If you don't have the strength of a nascent soul Grandmaster, I'm afraid you won't be able to deal with it. Moreover, your life might be in danger, so Junior asked a few more questions. The meaning in Huafeng's words was very clear. If Xiaohua wasn't here, Zhen Qing might have turned around and left. But at this moment, Zhen Qing's expression was calm and she said with a smile, Huafeng, don't worry. Bring us to see the Fire Qilan. We definitely won't disappoint him. Huafeng naturally couldn't tell the strength of Xiaohua, Yuanya, Zhen Qing and the others, but after hearing Zhen Qing's assurance, he was overjoyed. He brought Zhen Qing and the others and flew into the depths of the mountain. Senior Martial Brother. Sun Shu couldn't help but ask through voice transmission, are there any other cultivators from the other sects coming? Are there any other cultivators from the other sects? Sun Shu didn't know what to say when he saw the blazing hot air in front of him. Xiaohua glanced into the distance and revealed a strange expression. He said with a smile, I don't know many nascent soul cultivators, but I'm very familiar with this nascent soul cultivator. Who? Sun Shu was somewhat curious. After all, Xiaohua was only a foundation establishment cultivator before he went missing. Meng Country, Changbai Sect, Daoist Jingru. Xiaohua said word by word. Daoist Jingru. Sun Shu was stunned and asked curiously, he's a cultivator from Meng Country. Why did he come to my country of Shi? There's no other way. Xiaohua said with a smile, it seems that there are many nascent soul cultivators who received the favor of the three elders of the Ardent Fire Mountain. After several hundred years, their descendants can still find nascent soul cultivators to help them with their tokens. It's just that if the three elders of the Ardent Fire Mountain were the same person, and now that they're divided into three sects, I don't know who this favor belongs to. Xiaohua's words were naturally sarcastic. Zhen Qing and Sun Shu might not know, but Xiaohua was clear about the eccentric temperament of the three nascent soul cultivators of the Ardent Fire Mountain. The nascent soul cultivators they offended definitely exceeded the number of nascent soul cultivators who received their favor. Yes, it's been more than 700 years since the Sword Dao War. Zhen Qing sighed and said, the Fire Qilin took the token and went to find Martial Ancestor General. No wonder Martial Ancestor didn't want to come. Moreover, the Fire Qilin didn't come personally and only sent Huafeng over. There's something wrong with that. Oh. Xiao Hua was stunned. He thought that Zhenlei Palace really had some urgent matter, but now, it seemed that it was just Zhen Qing's excuse. Senior Martial Brother. Sun Shu asked, how did you know Daoist Jing Ru? How could we know each other? Xiao Hua smiled bitterly and said, this guy has enmity with me. Soon after, Xiao Hua whispered about the grudge between him and Daoist Jing Ru. Hearing that Daoist Jing Ru, a nascent soul cultivator, actually chased after Xiao Hua from Gue He all the way to the Imperial Thunder Sect, Sun Shu and Zhen Qing's expressions changed. Sun Shu even said with righteous indignation, is this still a nascent soul cultivator? So shameless? Fortunately. Xiao Hua smiled and said, I was lucky enough to escape back to the Imperial Thunder Sect. Since then, I haven't seen this guy again. Sun Shu shouted, Senior Martial Brother, just kill him. Zhen Qing immediately thought of Chen Yi and said with a bitter smile, Daoist really came back to the Dawn Rain continent to settle the karma. AI, yes, if I don't settle the karma, how can my Dao heart be clear? Xiao Hua said while transforming, Martial Uncle, if there's anything, just tell Yuanya. Junior will see what Daoist Jing Ru is like now before making a decision. Seeing Xiao Hua transforming into an unfamiliar cultivator, Zhen Qing smiled bitterly and said, all right, I hope this senior Jing Ru can pass the test. Daoist. Sun Qian, who had been silent all this time, suddenly asked, since you understand karma, are you preparing for ascension? Oh. Xiao Hua was surprised. He looked at Sun Qian and said, you know about ascension? Sun Qian's face was a bit red, and she said with a smile, Junior obtained a broken jade slip a long time ago, and there was an introduction about ascension inside. However, ascension is only a legend, so Junior has long forgotten about it. Xiao Hua nodded and replied, more or less. Xiao Hua's words were really shocking. Previously, Sun Shu inferred with common sense that Xiao Hua was a mid-nascent soul cultivator. Later, when she saw how powerful Yuanya was, Sun Shu racked her brains to guess Xiao Hua's cultivation level. Now, when she heard that Xiao Hua was about to ascend, her brain buzzed, as if the whole world was about to collapse or darken. The immortal realm was almost ethereal to all the cultivators on the Dawn Rain continent, but to Sun Shu, it was closer to an ideal. She had never thought that she would be able to face a cultivator who was about to ascend. Moreover, this cultivator had traveled with her and gone through trials and hardships together. Seeing everyone's astonishment, Xiao Hua said with a smile, this is the path that all cultivators must take. As long as you all work hard, this day will definitely come. Yes, Junior understands. Facing such a supreme cultivator, Zhen Qing didn't dare to be negligent. She bowed and replied, understood. AI, another karma settled. When Xiao Hua heard how Zhen Qing addressed him, he sighed in his heart. He understood that he had one less concern in this world. While everyone was talking, they arrived in front of another mountain. This mountain was one of the many mountain peaks. Cryptic fluctuations were emitted from it from time to time. Wherever the fluctuations passed, faint flames would appear in the void. When the wind blew, the flames would also appear. Everyone stood in front of the mountain peak as if they were facing a huge bundle of flames. Senior, please wait a moment. Huafeng stopped and respectfully said, Junior asks Martial Ancestor to come out and welcome us. Well said. Zhen Qing replied with a smile. With an ascended cultivator overseeing things, she was even more confident. Huafeng sent out a communication talisman. Not long after, the Fire Qilin flew over with a group of disciples from the Ardent Fire Mountain. Some of these disciples were quite old, some were young, and some were in the Foundation establishment realm. However, most of them were in the aura refining realm. When the Fire Qilin saw that Xing Yunzi wasn't among the group of cultivators, he was obviously disappointed. However, this was within his expectations. When he saw Xiao Hua, his face unconsciously became more spirited. He hurriedly bowed respectfully and said, "Junior Fire Qilin greets Senior." "Senior, you seem a bit unfamiliar. How should I address you?" "This old man's name is Zhang Xiaohua." Xiaohua said with a smile. "Just call me Senior Zhang." "Yes, yes, Junior greets Senior Zhang." After the Fire Qilin bowed, he greeted everyone. Xiaohua paid attention to the Fire Qilin. At this time, the Fire Qilin was already a late-stage gold core cultivator. Not only was his face old, but there was also a lot of fatigue between his eyebrows. However, the way he greeted people was very different from before. He was no longer straightforward and had added the necessary etiquette. Although there was a lot of hypocrisy in his etiquette, it could still be considered an improvement. Vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip. Thank you for all forms of support. Thank you to Alliance Leader Mei Xianjun, Alliance Leader Chuan Tong, Alliance Leader Daoist Xiao, Book of Flight, and other fellow Taoists. Chapter 5089. After greeting each other, the Fire Qilin couldn't help but ask again, "Fellow Daoist Gen, does Senior Xing Yunzi really have no time to come? Today's matter is really too important to I." Hearing this, Xiaohua laughed in his heart and thought to himself, after all, it's the Fire Qilin. If it was someone else who knew that Xing Yunzi wasn't coming, why would they ask again? Moreover, he didn't go out to greet him and only sent a disciple. This is obviously disrespectful to the Imperial Thunder sect. Zhen Qing had no choice but to repeat the previous words. The disappointment on the Fire Qilin's face deepened. He looked at Zhen Qing and then at Xiaohua and asked in a low voice, "Senior Zhang, what's your current strength?" "I'm at the early nascent soul stage." Xiaohua said, proudly. "What? If you only want to wait for Xing Yunzi, then I'll go back first." Zhen Qing hurriedly mediated and said, "Fire Qilin, Senior Zhang is a good friend of my Grandmaster. Grandmaster Zhen can't come, so he specially invited Senior Zhang to come. Don't be rude." The Fire Qilin woke up and hurriedly said with an apologetic smile, "Senior, please don't blame me. Junior didn't mean that." Junior heard that the Fire One not only invited Changbai Sect's Reverend Jingru, but also invited a mysterious cultivator. That Reverend Jingru is a senior in the middle or late nascent soul stage. Junior was afraid that Senior Zhang would be at a disadvantage. "Fire Qilin, why did you invite Xing Yunzi over?" Xiaohua frowned and said, "I'm only here to represent Xing Yunzi. I'm not here to fight with my life on the line. You have to explain the matter clearly." The Fire Qilin was somewhat embarrassed and hurriedly replied, "Senior, there's no need to fight with my life on the line, but a fight is possible. Junior begs Senior. Junior's life is in Senior's hands. I'm just an early nascent soul stage cultivator. How can I be Reverend Jingru's opponent?" Xiaohua said, "You've put your life on my hands. Isn't it all for nothing?" "Oh, Senior, don't worry." The Fire Qilin said again, "Junior invited Senior Zhen and others, damn it." Xiaohua said somewhat angrily, "Fire Qilin, what's going on? What happened to your ardent fire mountain? Who else did you invite?" "Senior." The Fire Qilin hurriedly replied. But at that moment, whoosh! Another messaging talisman flew over from afar, passing through the many restrictive spells and landing in front of the Fire Qilin. The Fire Qilin received the messaging talisman and glanced at it. It was immediately overjoyed and cried out, "Senior Zhang, please wait a moment. This junior will go and welcome Adept Bluefeather. Everything will be explained once I return." After saying that, the Fire Qilin's figure streaked across the sky and rushed out of the ardent fire mountain. Behind him, the group of Ardent Fire Mountain disciples were somewhat flustered. They did not know if they should follow the Fire Qilin to welcome Adept Bluefeather or stay here to accompany Xiao Hua and the others. Of course, this was only for a short moment before some older disciples of the Ardent Fire Mountain appeared. After a brief discussion, some of them brought their disciples and flew up to welcome Adept Bluefeather. Some of them stayed where they were, accompanying Xiao Hua and the others as they waited for Adept Bluefeather. He, Senior, please forgive me. The one who accompanied Xiao Hua was an early-stage gold-core old man. He smiled and said to Xiao Hua, Senior, don't look at my family's young master's lack of understanding. His temperament is the most straightforward and sincere. He is the most suitable candidate to be the sect master of the Ardent Fire Mountain. Only he can convince the masses and make the other two sects of the Ardent Fire Mountain follow him wholeheartedly. Xiao Hua did not comment. He also looked out of the Ardent Fire Mountain like everyone else. He seemed to have some thoughts in his heart. Adept Bluefeather is a nascent soul cultivator of the Meng Nation's immortal music sect. Adept Jingyu is also a nascent soul cultivator of the Meng Nation's Changbai sect. These two nascent soul cultivators of the Meng Nation were invited by two people of the Ardent Fire Mountain at the same time. Is this a coincidence? In fact, whether it was a coincidence or not didn't mean anything to Xiao Hua. In just half a cup of tea's time, Adept Bluefeather and his disciples had already arrived in front of the Ardent Fire Mountain accompanied by the Fire Qilin. Xiao Hua had met Adept Bluefeather in the Xiankong Pavilion of Haoming City. At that time, Adept Bluefeather was just a short and fat early-stage nascent soul cultivator. 600 years had left a lot of hardships on Adept Bluefeather's face. It even allowed Adept Bluefeather to step into the late-stage nascent soul stage. However, it did not change Adept Bluefeather's short and fat body. Xiao Hua recognized the high and mighty nascent soul grandmaster at a glance. Junior greets Adept Bluefeather. Although Adept Bluefeather was a cultivator of the Meng Nation, the disciples of the Ardent Fire Mountain and the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect all bowed to greet him. While everyone bowed, only Xiao Hua and Yuanya stood upright. Adept Bluefeather naturally saw Xiao Hua and Yuanya. Xiao Hua was somewhat glad that he had suppressed his realm to the nascent soul stage. If he had been at the gold core stage, he might have had to salute Adept Bluefeather. Wouldn't he have reaped what he sowed? Thinking of this, Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said, I Zhang Xiao Hua greets Adept Bluefeather. Zhang Xiao Hua. Adept Bluefeather frowned and asked curiously, how come this old man didn't know that there was a nascent soul cultivator called Zhang Xiao Hua in the country of Xi? Fellow Taoist is not a cultivator of the country of Xi, so naturally you don't know about the matters of the country of Xi. Xiao Hua retorted indifferently, could it be that every nascent soul cultivator in the country of Xi has to report to the country of Meng? Senior. The Fire Qilin hurriedly tried to smooth things over and said with a smile, Senior Bluefeather, this Senior Zhang is a good friend of Senior Xing Yunzi from the Imperial Thunder sect. He came to my Ardent Fire Mountain because of Senior Zhen's request. Senior, please don't misunderstand. How can this old man misunderstand? Adept Bluefeather sneered, this old man is only afraid that someone has mixed in with us and hindered you from taking charge of the Ardent Fire Mountain. Take charge of the Ardent Fire Mountain. Xiao Hua frowned and said, Fire Qilin, this old man asked you before. This old man didn't know what happened to your Ardent Fire Mountain, and you didn't explain clearly. How come there's someone taking charge of the Ardent Fire Mountain now? The Fire Qilin smiled bitterly and said, Senior Zhang, no matter what, you are still a nascent soul cultivator of the country of Xi. How could you not know the current situation of my Ardent Fire Mountain? Xiao Hua nodded and said, this old man naturally knows the situation of the Ardent Fire Mountain. Since the fall of the three elders of the Ardent Fire Mountain hundreds of years ago, the Ardent Fire Mountain has become a pile of loose sand. There hasn't been a qualified sect master to support the Ardent Fire Mountain. Speaking up to hear, Xiao Hua suddenly realized and said, "This old man understands. This time, you want to choose a suitable sect master, right?" Facing Xiao Hua's hindsight, the Fire Qilin was a little embarrassed. He smiled and said, "Senior Zhang is right. That's why this junior invited Adept Bluefeather and Senior Zhen to help this junior. So that I can take the position of sect master of the Ardent Fire Mountain in one fell swoop." Xiao Hua took a deep look at the Fire Qilin and said with a smile, "So that's how it is." This old man received Xing Yunzi's message and hurried over, so I didn't think much about it. No wonder you said that you needed this old man to take action. But since this old man wants to take action, what benefits does this old man have? Seeing Xiao Hua directly ask about the benefits in front of so many people, the Fire Qilin's expression became very awkward. He looked at Adept Bluefeather and opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but he hesitated. Adept Bluefeather was displeased. He looked at Xiao Hua and asked, "Fellow Taoist Zhang, which sect are you from?" "Fortune Gate." Xiao Hua replied indifferently. "Fortune Gate." Adept Bluefeather was stunned. Then, a sneer appeared on his face and he said coldly, "So you were sent by Zhong Haran to tease this old man." When the Fire Qilin heard this, he was also stunned. He looked at Xiao Hua strangely and whispered, "Fortune Gate." Without waiting for Xiao Hua to explain, Adept Bluefeather said, "This old man doesn't care which sect you are from, but since you are a nascent soul master, you should have the awareness of a nascent soul master. You should understand the rules of a high-level cultivator. When you saw this old man just now, you didn't even know how to salute, and now you are asking about the benefits in front of others. Could it be that your family's elders didn't teach you?" Seeing that Adept Bluefeather was getting angry and even dared to talk about his sect's elders, an early gold core old man who had accompanied the Fire Qilin to greet Adept Bluefeather hurriedly flew out from the crowd and bowed, "Senior Bluefeather, please don't be anxious." Adept Bluefeather was even more displeased with being interrupted. He sneered, "Who are you? How dare you interrupt this old man?" The Fire Qilin hurriedly said, "Senior, please know that this is the Hall Master of my Ardent Fire Mountain's Fire Spirit Hall, Hall Master Hua Pengfei. Senior, please don't be anxious. Listen to Junior's explanation." Hua Pengfei said with a smile, "Although this Senior Zhang is a bit straightforward, his words are not excessive. After all, he followed Senior to the Ardent Fire Mountain from afar. From a moral point of view, he has already done his best. Supporting my Fire Qilin's martial uncle Hua to take charge of the Ardent Fire Mountain is not something that can be decided with just a few words. We invited seniors to come here to borrow senior strength. If my Ardent Fire Mountain did not pay any price, how could seniors help us? When we sent the message to seniors that day, juniors wanted to make things clear. However, Martial Uncle Qilin felt that seniors had not come yet, so it was too unscrupulous to talk about the price and benefits. Therefore, he did not say anything. As a matter of fact, it caused a misunderstanding. Senior Xing Yunzi of the Imperial Thunder sect did not come, and Senior Zhang also misunderstood that my Ardent Fire Mountain only spoke empty words. This is the fault of my Ardent Fire Mountain. Junior apologizes to seniors on behalf of Martial Uncle Qilin. Seeing that Hua Pengfei was apologizing, the Fire Qilin hurriedly said, "This is my fault. How can I let Hall Master Hua apologize?" Senior Zhang, Senior Bluefeather, Junior was not familiar with the affairs of the common people in his early years. These years, I have changed a lot, but after all, let's not talk about it. This is Junior's fault. Seniors, please forgive me. Xiao Hua was about to raise his hand to speak when he suddenly saw Adept Bluefeather's lips move. His heart stirred and he slightly urged his divine ability. Adept Bluefeather's voice transmitted to his ears, "Pengfei, Fire Qilin still hasn't decided. This Zhang Xiaohua is a nascent soul cultivator from which sect in the state of Xi? Don't let him mess up our plans. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote, vote for a recommendation vote, collect a collection, reward, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 50-90. Senior, don't worry. Hua Pengfei bowed and said, this is not a matter of Fire Qilin's decision. Fire Hibiscus and Fire Luan have already offered that item as the price, how could he not comply? If Ardent Fire Mountain had not decided on this matter, how could this junior dare to let Fire Qilin send a communication talisman to senior? As for this Zhang Xiaohua, this junior has never heard of her. However, when I sent the message to Imperial Thunder Sect Senior Xing Yunzi, there was no mention of that item. Presumably, Senior Xing Yunzi did not know about it, so he sent this senior over. This shows that Imperial Thunder Sect does not attach importance to this matter. Senior Zhang, I'll have to trouble Senior to speak about it. After all, this junior has already told Senior that a senior from Imperial Thunder Sect will come. And, this old man understands. Daoist Master Blue Feather agreed and said, this old man will see the situation first. He. Xiaohua understood and thought, so the matter of Ardent Fire Mountain is really complicated. This Daoist Master Blue Feather does not seem to have a relationship with the three elders of Ardent Fire Mountain, but is colluding with this Hall Master called Hua Pengfei. His goal is the item of Ardent Fire Mountain. However, Daoist Master Blue Feather is already a mid or late nascent soul cultivator. At this time, Ardent Fire Mountain does not even have a single nascent soul cultivator. If he wants that item, he can just come and take it. Why go through so much trouble? Xiaohua thought and hurriedly raised his hand to support Fire Qilin and the others. He said with a smile, this old man is ashamed of himself. This old man is not a profiteer. Because of the changes in the world's spiritual energy, this old man has seen my fellow Taoists fall under the thunder tribulation one after another. This old man is pregnant with a nascent soul and needs to cultivate peacefully. How can I act rashly? Therefore, this old man wants to know. Senior. Fire Qilin stood up and bit his lips. He seemed to be forced to speak, Senior, rest assured, my Ardent Fire Mountain, just as Fire Qilin said this, woo-woo. A whistling sound came from the distant mountain range. Everyone looked up and saw a fireball falling like a star. Fire Qilin saw the fireball and his expression changed slightly. He glanced at Hua Pengfei, who also had an inexplicable expression and whispered, Lu Hua's message. Martial uncle, could it be? It seems that there is a change. Fire Qilin said. The fireball had already landed in front of Fire Qilin in a flash. The Fire Qilin opened its mouth and spat out a mouthful of scarlet red true yuan into the fireball. The fireball quickly shrank and turned into a fist-sized jade ball. When the Fire Qilin's divine sense entered the jade ball, a look of realization appeared on its face. It said, the Fire Hibiscus and the Fire Yuan request to postpone the battle. They intend to change it to 10 days later. After saying this, the Fire Qilin seemed to have temporarily removed a heavy burden, and said to Daoist Master Blue Feather and Xiaohua with a smile, since that's the case, seniors, please move to the Fire Spirit Hall. Junior, wait. Before the Fire Qilin could finish speaking, Hua Pengfei spoke abruptly. Martial uncle, you must not agree to it. Seniors, there's no need to wait here. Head directly to Jiuhua Peak. Oh. The Fire Qilin was puzzled and asked, why? The two seniors have come from afar and haven't rested yet. Isn't it good for them to delay the time? Martial uncles, can you tell me the reason for the delay? Hua Pengfei asked. The Fire Qilin shook its head. No. Then when is the date we agreed on? Hua Pengfei asked. Tomorrow, of course. The Fire Qilin smiled. Isn't this what we agreed on together? Martial uncle. Hua Pengfei smiled bitterly. Senior, you have to think about it. They wanted to set the time 5 days ago, but the reason we strongly opposed it and insisted on setting the time tomorrow was because we were worried that Senior Blue Feather wouldn't be able to arrive in time. Now that Senior Blue Feather and Senior Zhang have arrived, they want to postpone it instead. Senior, why do you think they are postponing it? The Fire Qilin was ignorant of worldly affairs, but that didn't mean it was stupid. On the contrary, it was extremely intelligent. When it heard this, it already understood and nodded. That's right, there's no need to say anything more. The reinforcements Hua Furong and Hua Wan asked for definitely didn't arrive in time, so they decided to postpone it. If we want to win, we definitely can't agree to postpone it. At this point, the Fire Qilin hesitated again and said, but when we asked to postpone it that day, Furong also helped us. Martial Uncle Qilin. Hua Pengfei persuaded. Senior, think about it again. If not for Martial Uncle Furong having difficulties and her reinforcements not arriving in time, would she have agreed to postpone it? Now, there's no time to lose. Martial Uncle has sent a message to Lu Hua, saying that he doesn't agree to postpone it. Furthermore, we will now rush to Jiuhua Peak. Senior Blue Feather and Senior Zhang will be waiting there. We'll see how they respond. The Fire Qilin was still hesitant. Following which, some disciples of Ardent Fire Mountain began to persuade it. After a few moments, the Fire Qilin sent a message to Xiao Hua and Daoist Blue Feather. Two seniors, this junior originally wanted to set up a banquet, no need to say more. Daoist Blue Feather was rather straightforward. He flicked his sleeve and said, "This old man doesn't lack a banquet from your Ardent Fire Mountain. Hurry to Jiuhua Peak. This matter is over. This old man still has other matters to attend to." Yes, yes. Senior, please. The Fire Qilin respectfully said. This junior happens to be on the way. I'll explain the matter that I didn't explain to the two seniors. Xiao Hua naturally didn't mind. He flew to the other side of the Fire Qilin and listened to the Fire Qilin explain the matter. It wasn't particularly different from his guess. After the Ardent Fire Mountain was divided into 3 factions, they hadn't been able to select a suitable sect head. Although the Fire Qilin's cultivation was high, he wasn't familiar with common affairs. Many disciples of the Ardent Fire Mountain were unconvinced. Hua Furong and Hua Jiu weren't strong either. Therefore, the 3 factions had been in a stalemate for close to 100 years. Afterwards, when they saw the Ardent Fire Mountain declining, everyone felt that if this continued, the Ardent Fire Mountain would be exterminated before the sect had appeared. Therefore, everyone thought of the final battle. Speaking of battle, the Fire Qilin was naturally the leader. Hua Furong and Hua Wan proposed that they couldn't rely on the disciples of the Ardent Fire Mountain to decide the sect head. After all, the Ardent Fire Mountain was also a Dao cultivator sect in the Cultivation 3 nations. They could also invite disciples from other sects to participate. If the Fire Qilin had more tricks up his sleeves, he naturally wouldn't agree. However, the Fire Qilin only cared about his family and didn't think too much about it. Therefore, he readily agreed. Of course, if they invited cultivators from outside the Ardent Fire Mountain to participate, Jindan cultivators definitely wouldn't do. At the very least, they would have to be early nascent soul cultivators. If they wanted early nascent soul cultivators to participate, just as Xiao Hua said, there would be a price. And the price for the entire Ardent Fire Mountain to pay for a nascent soul cultivator to participate was the most valuable treasure of the Ardent Fire Mountain, Jiuhua Peak. As for what this most valuable treasure was, it seemed that only the 3 elders of the Ardent Fire Mountain who had fallen knew about it. No one else knew. This most valuable treasure was sealed within the fire pond under Jiuhua Peak. If they wanted to open this seal, they would have to rely on the 3 tokens that the 3 elders of the Ardent Fire Mountain usually hung around their necks. These 3 tokens weren't lost during the sword battle. They were brought back to the Ardent Fire Mountain by the disciples of the Ardent Fire Mountain and obtained by the leaders of the 3 sections. Now, they were in the hands of the Fire Qilin, fire hibiscus, and fire one respectively. To open the seal, not only did it require the 3 tokens, it also required the blood essence of 3 direct bloodlines and a secret technique. It was said that the secret technique was even more strange. It was different every hour. Only by activating the token and dripping a drop of blood essence on the seal would the caster be able to know what the secret technique was. And if the caster didn't know the secret technique or failed to open the seal of the fire pond would produce an extremely powerful backlash that would kill the caster. This was perhaps the reason why Taoist Master Blue Feather didn't dare to act rashly. The current plan of the Ardent Fire Mountain was to use this most valuable treasure to ask a nascent soul Grandmaster to help and choose a sect master of the Ardent Fire Mountain. Moreover, the nascent soul Grandmaster would have to swear a blood oath to help the sect master govern the Ardent Fire Mountain for 100 years. After listening to the Fire Qilin's introduction, Xiaohua smiled wryly and said, "Fire Qilin, it's not that I don't agree, but you don't even know what the treasure under the Dove Fire Mountain is, yet you want this old man to help. Moreover, I have to swear a blood oath to help you govern the Ardent Fire Mountain for 100 years. If other sects besiege the Ardent Fire Mountain, does my Fortune Gate have to help you out?" The Fire Qilin smiled apologetically. "Senior's words are reasonable. However, since it's something my 3 great-grandfathers sealed, it can't be wrong. It should be something that seniors can use. Perhaps, it would be of some help when one's cultivation reaches the severed god realm. As for helping this junior, I hope senior can forgive me. Although my Ardent Fire Mountain has declined, if the 3 sects work together, 100 years is enough for my Ardent Fire Mountain to recover. Therefore, if senior obtains the treasure, I hope senior can protect my Ardent Fire Mountain for 100 years. All right. If your Ardent Fire Mountain thinks this treasure is worth it, then this old man will reluctantly agree." Xiaohua nodded thoughtfully, but he soon realized something and frowned. "But, does your Ardent Fire Mountain have 2 supreme treasures? How will this old man and Taoist Blue Feather divide them?" "Fellow Taoist Zhang." Taoist Blue Feather sneered and said, "The Ardent Fire Mountain may have 1 supreme treasure, or 2, or even 3 supreme treasures. However, before we discuss how to divide them, you and I must first consider helping the Fire Qilin seize the sect master position. Secondly, we must consider who will put in more effort and who will put in less effort in the process of competing for the position." He. Xiaohua laughed. "This old man thinks that with 2 nascent soul masters like us here, the Ardent Fire Mountain sect master position will be easily obtained. Is it possible that the Fire Hibiscus and the Fire Yuan will invite 4 more nascent soul masters? Fellow Taoist Zhang, don't be careless." Taoist Blue Feather frowned. "You have the opportunity to advance to the nascent soul realm, and other cultivators naturally have the same opportunity. Although the spiritual chi of heaven and earth has changed, and many cultivators have fallen under the sudden nascent soul thunder tribulation, many disciples of aristocratic families have awakened their bloodline, and they have the opportunity to attack the nascent soul realm. The current strength of the aristocratic families in my main country has already emerged, and they are close to the true cultivation sects. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a month, vote for a recommendation, collect, reward, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 5091. As Xiaohua flew, he seemed to be pondering. After a long time, he nodded and said, "All right. My cultivation is not as good as fellow Blue Feathers, so I can't use more strength than fellow Blue Feather. This time, I will listen to fellow Blue Feather's arrangement and don't let I suffer a loss." Ha! Taoist Blue Feather laughed and clapped. "We came to Ardent Fire Mountain to repay the old affection of the 3 elders of Ardent Fire Mountain. Since fellow Zhang said so, how can this old man let you suffer a loss?" There were many disciples of the Ardent Fire Mountain that followed the Fire Qilin to the Jiuhua Peak. Other than Hua Pengfei, the majority of the disciples had come. They followed behind the Fire Qilin and were all whispering to each other. Their faces were filled with excitement as if they had already seen the Fire Qilin obtain the position of sect master. As for the Fire Qilin, after talking to Xiao Hua and Daoist Blue Feather, he was somewhat depressed. He led everyone through the layers of restrictions and arrived in front of a small mountain peak. Unsurprisingly, this mountain was also crimson in color. However, it was a little short. On the opposite side of the mountain, there were two other mountains that were similarly short, forming a tripod. The three mountains sandwiched a fire pond. This fire pond was calm, like a fiery red agate that was 100 miles in size. "Senior, please wait a moment." Although they could already see the fire pond, the Fire Qilin still cautiously stopped in midair and said, "This Jiuhua Peak still has one last restriction. Wait for this junior to open it." Soon after, the Fire Qilin threw out a yellow talisman that contained blood essence. A series of muffled rumbling sounds came from the bottom of the mountain peak. It was as if a millstone was rolling up the mountain peak. Layers of scarlet flames poured down from the top of the mountain until the flames covered the entire mountain peak. Ho-ho! A rarely seen heat wave rushed out from the mountain peak. The nearby space slightly swayed, as if it was somewhat distorted. After the heat wave, scattered fluctuations rushed out like raindrops. Wherever the fluctuations went, sparks flew everywhere. After a full meal, the fluctuations gradually thinned out and disappeared. A powerful aura mixed with heat seeped out from the fire pond and rushed into the sky. Hiss! Even someone as strong as Xiao Hua sucked in a breath of cold air upon seeing this aura. He secretly cried out, "This is the aura of a fire attribute soul." Could it be that a soul was sealed under the fire pond? Oh, right. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua suddenly looked at Reverend Blue Feather and came to a realization. That year in the Xian Kong Pavilion of Haoming City, the three elders of the Ardent Fire Mountain once said that they had an incomplete soul of an 8th-stage spirit beast. This Reverend Blue Feather wanted to make a deal with the three elders of the Ardent Fire Mountain and use the soul of the 8th-stage spirit beast to repair their spirit weapons. However, the three elders of the Ardent Fire Mountain wanted an innate jellyfish, but this Reverend Blue Feather didn't have one. Could it be that this is the soul of the 8th-stage spirit beast? If that's the case, then I can explain why Adept Blue Feather insisted on interfering in the matters of Ardent Fire Mountain. Senior. Just as Xiao Hua was pondering, the Fire Qilin spoke again. "Inside the formation is a forbidden area of my blazing fire mountain, and it's called Zhurong Hall. It's said that this place is an ancient ruin." Oh, I remember that Senior Blue Feather had also been to the Xian Kong Pavilion in Haoming City. This place is similar to the Xian Kong Pavilion, but it's a little damaged. Oh. Adept Blue Feather raised his eyebrows and asked curiously, "I remember that the Xian Kong Pavilion is an imitation of the Void Palace, and there are mysteries of the Great Tao inside. Could it be that your Zhurong Hall also has such mysteries?" The Fire Qilin smiled apologetically and said, "I'm not sure about this. After all, my cultivation is shallow and I can't see anything. However, the interior of this hall is a little strange, so it's better for seniors to be careful. According to my three great-grandfathers, they don't dare to walk around carelessly inside." I understand. Adept Blue Feather casually replied, and then looked at the restriction that had just been opened. His expression was a little uncertain because his divine sense couldn't penetrate the restriction, so he couldn't see what was inside. However, after hearing the Fire Qilin's words, the three mountain peaks and the fire pond he saw just now were most likely illusions. Sure enough, after the Fire Qilin passed through the restriction, they also saw three mountain peaks, but the scenery was completely different. On top of the mountain peaks were rugged rocks of strange shapes, and each rock was larger than an ordinary hill. There were some strange runes between the rocks, and they looked not only old but also broken. The runes flickered with a dark red light, as if the energy waves that had rushed out from them had come from these runes. However, this wasn't the worst. As soon as everyone entered the restriction, their gazes were immediately attracted by a majestic hall on top of the mountain. This hall was simple and unadorned, and it looked extremely large, as if it covered the sky and the mountain peaks. What welcomed them was a vermilion door. The door was extremely large, and the pillars beside it were also extremely tall. Although the door was half closed, the space it revealed was enough for a dozen people to enter at the same time. On top of the door was a similarly large plaque, but this plaque was already broken, and the words couldn't be seen clearly. Only the flame-like patterns on the edges of the plaque could be seen flickering. As everyone flew closer to the door, a powerful and intimidating aura was emitted from the door, as if a huge monster was opening its mouth and inviting its guests to enter. Senior. The fire Qilin landed in front of the door and smiled apologetically. This is one of the 3 doors of Zhurong Hall. We can't fly in, and we can only walk in from the ground. Reverend Blue Feather nodded. Guests should follow the host's wishes. You lead the way, and this old man will follow behind. The fire Qilin entered Zhurong Hall first, and Reverend Blue Feather and Xiaohua followed behind. After entering the hall, what entered everyone's eyes was another simple hall, and the furnishings and decorations inside were much larger than usual. The fire Qilin didn't stay in the hall for long, and it flew straight into the hall. After passing through a few halls, the fire aura gradually grew stronger, and there were traces of fire in the hall. Moreover, there were already some fire shadows on the left side of the hall, and there were also layers of light and shadow in front of the hall, as if there was a real fire burning. In the end, everyone walked into a damaged hall. Instead of calling this hall a hall, it was more like a platform. This was because the hall had already collapsed. Above the roof of the hall was a greenish-white sky. The floor of the hall was filled with huge cracks, and the abnormally large benefactors were lying on the ground. What was special was that at the front of the hall, where the hall was torn apart, all the cracks were rolling downwards. It looked as if a huge rock had fallen from the sky and caused the hall to collapse again. Xiaohua and the others walked to the other side of the hall, where the hole had been torn apart. Looking down, they saw a bottomless abyss, with smoke lingering in the abyss. Layers of flames rushed out from the bottom of the abyss without restraint, rushing into the sky and into the dome of heaven. The abyss was about 10 miles wide, and there were some faint red lights flashing in it. Waves of obscure fluctuations rushed out from the red lights, and obviously, there was a powerful restriction formation at the bottom. The flames couldn't block everyone's sight. They looked at the bottom of the abyss, then raised their eyes to the opposite side. Through the flames, they could clearly see that there were also 2 collapsed halls, but the floor of the hall was slightly smaller than the floor under everyone's feet. At this moment, there weren't any figures in these 2 halls, only broken fences and dilapidated walls. The fire Qilin stopped, pointed at the abyss, and said, "Senior, below this abyss is the fire pond, and above the fire pond is a layer of restriction formation. According to my 3 great-grandfathers, this restriction formation is one with Zhurong Palace, but due to some accident, Zhurong Palace was broken, and a flaw appeared in the restriction formation, which allowed them to use the power of the restriction formation to set up their magic formation. Of course, this magic formation was also created by comprehending the restriction formation of Zhurong Palace, and is not an ordinary magic formation." Reverend Blue Feather slightly nodded and casually responded, but didn't comment. Next to him, Na had already begun to transmit his voice to Huopengfei. "Senior, this is the seal that this junior was talking about earlier. This junior has tried to break it several times. Every time I tried, an extremely powerful counterattack force would be generated from the seal. It is far beyond what this junior can withstand. Therefore, this junior does not dare to act rashly. What's the secret technique that the fire Qilin mentioned?" Reverend Blue Feather's lips slightly moved as he asked, "Why can't this old man see anything special about it? Junior doesn't know about this." Huopengfei looked around, then lowered his head and transmitted his voice. "Junior has only heard about it from the 3 great-grandfathers of Blazing Fire Mountain when they were still alive. Junior hasn't been here before, and only after receiving Senior's message did I sneak in. This so-called secret technique, Junior doesn't know about it at all. You can be considered the direct descendant of the 3 great-grandfathers of Blazing Fire Mountain, so how come you don't even know about this secret? Reverend Blue Feather's words were somewhat directed at Hua Pengfei's heart. Sure enough, Hua Pengfei fiercely replied, Senior is right. The Fire Qilan's bloodline isn't as pure as this Junior's, but he has received the love of the 3 great-grandfathers of Blazing Fire Mountain. Therefore, his position is far above this Junior's. Senior, look at his indecisive appearance, how can he be a good sect master? If this Junior was in his position, it would be impossible for the situation of Blazing Fire Mountain to become like this. Don't worry. Reverend Blue Feather laughed, this time, this old man will first help the Fire Qilan become the sect master, then I'll suggest you to become the vice sect master. After a period of time, you will be able to ascend to the position of sect master. Many thanks, Senior. Hua Pengfei found it inconvenient to bow, but his tone was still respectful. No matter if it was Hua Pengfei or Reverend Blue Feather, they would never have dreamed that Xiao Hua had heard every single word of their conversation. Poor Fire Qilan, how could he have known that he had been plotted against by a disciple of his sect and a senior of his sect? He looked at the opposite side, then turned around and respectfully said to Xiao Hua and Reverend Blue Feather, 2 seniors, this Junior has already sent Lu Hua's message to Hua Furong and Hua Wan, informing them that the battle will continue as usual. The time of the battle will be tomorrow. 2 seniors, please take a rest here and wait for Hua Furong and Hua Wan to enter Zhurong Palace tomorrow morning. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it as a reward. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.